Post-tax and budget dialogue, financial year 2022-2023. My name is Priscilla Regina Naloga, and I'm delighted to be with you. So we're going to start off by observing the national anthems for Uganda and the East African community. And when those play, I'll require you to stand up. Welcome to the East African Community Post-Tax and Budget Dialogue, financial year 2022-2023. We start off with the Uganda anthem. The East African anthem. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You may take your seats. Good morning to you once again. My name is Priscilla Regina Naloga, anchor at NTV Uganda. Delightful to be your host this morning, which is my duty. I welcome you to the East African Community Post-Tax and Budget Dialogue, financial year 2022-2023. As part of the process to promote integration within the East African Community region, East African member states agreed back in 2007 to harmonize their budget readings as part of the efforts towards harmonizing taxation regimes. This financial year, the East African partner states, except Kenya, read their respective national budgets for the financial year 2022-2023 on June 14th. Today, Tuesday, 21st June 2022, here at the Kampala Serena Conference Center, as part of the East African Community Post-Tax and Budget Dialogue for the financial year 2022-2023, panel experts from across the East African region and representing government, MDLs, private sector, civil society, the East African Secretariat, and international research organizations are here and are in this room to share expertise and share perspectives on the various tax measures for Uganda and the East Africa region in general. Non-tariff barriers that impede trade across the region, and of course, loopholes that facilitate tax avoidance and evasion and their implications on the East African regional integration process. Under the theme, accelerating economic recovery and enhancing productive sectors for the improved livelihood in the East African region, defining joint strategies for a faster recovery. And the key address is going to be delivered by Right Honorable Dr. Alitwala Rebecca Kadaga, who's the first Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for the East African Community Affairs in the Ugandan government. Moderated by Dr. Fred Muhumza, senior economist, we are going to be having different panels throughout today. And the proceedings are being brought to you live on NTV Uganda, right from right now, all the way to 11 and midday perhaps. And they're going to be streaming live also on URA TV, as well as streaming live on the Siatini YouTube channel and Smart TV 24. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. This dialogue is organized by the National Budget Month partners, including the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. We are also partnered with the Uganda Revenue Authority, Siatini Uganda, in collaboration with the Ministry of East African Community Affairs, East African Community Secretariat, among other partners such as the Tax Justice Network Africa, as well as Diacona and Oxfam. Thank you so much, our partners, for organizing this occasion. Now, without further ado, I would like to start off by looking at our program. Our program is going to be led by Ms. Jen Nalunga, who's the Executive Director with Siatini, Uganda. She will be welcoming our keynote address speaker. You're most welcome, Ms. Nalunga.
Thank you so much, Regina, and good morning once again to our participants. Good morning. I would like, on behalf of the organizers of this dialogue, there are many. We have been partnering with a number of partners: Ministry of Finance, URA, Bank of Uganda, a number of civil society organizations. You know, all of us who have been really working hard in this budget dialogues to ensure that that our people understand the budget, understand issues of taxation, and own them. So let me take this opportunity to welcome our guest of honor, the Right Honorable Dr. Rebecca Kadaga, first Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of EAC Affairs. Honorable Doctor, you are most welcome. And I know you are under pressure to go to the airport. So my words are going to be just few, just to inform you. This dialogue is about ensuring that we accelerate economic recovery and enhance productive sectors for improved livelihoods in the EAC region. We are looking at addressing and charting a way forward for joint strategies to ensure that our region recover faster from the post-COVID pandemic, but also from the wars going on in Ukraine and Russia, which have impacted on our economy very adversely. Right Honorable, there are a number of participants here. They are members from Ministry of EAC Affairs with whom we have organized this dialogue, commissioners from URA, directors, director from economic policy, and because of that time, it will be difficult, Honorable, for all of us to introduce ourselves. So because of that, let me humbly invite you. Maybe I would have given this duty to somebody else to invite you to come and give your opening remarks. But because of the time factor, I'm going to take that honor to invite you, Right Honorable, to come and give us your opening remarks. But thank you so much for coming. We do value the partnership between your ministry and the civil society, and especially with Siatini We thank you so much, Honorable, Right Honorable Dr. Rebecca Kadag, please. Thank you so much, and we can give an applause.
Thank you very much, Madam Narunga, the members of the East African Legislative Assembly, the Uganda members of Parliament, the government officials. I believe the Kenya Revenue Authority is also here, the EAC Secretariat, the National Budget Month partners, and civil society. It's a pleasure to be here. Good morning. Habari za asubuhi. Bonjour. On behalf of the government and the Ministry of East African Community, I'm delighted to congratulate the National Budget Month partners on organizing this very important dialogue under the theme Accelerating Economic Recovery and Enhancing Productive Sectors for Improved Livelihood in the EAC region, defining joint strategies for faster recovery. Tax and Budget Dialogue for 2022-2023 is part of a series of coordinated activities aimed at creating awareness about government priorities and strategies for the financial 2023 and providing accountability to the citizens. Indeed, I was very happy to see the Commissioner General yesterday spending the day talking to the people of Uganda. It's not just a question of collecting our taxes, but should also know how we are using them and how you're managing it. So I really want to thank you for this. I want to thank the organizers because throughout the EAC partner states, all our economies are making efforts to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic and other negative aspects. But I'm glad that despite the hardships, despite the disruptions, we were able to survive, to be alive, to continue working because of the decisions and strategies taken by the President to fight the pandemic. And I want to thank the Ministry of Health and the frontline health workers who stood out in the front to support our well-being. However, today, the fuel crisis has had a massive ripple effect on the cost of transporting food in and to the regions, in addition to other things. The government, I know, is undertaking other measures to ensure that that we are able to stabilize the economy, but also to make sure that the vulnerable people are supported. But those measures will be discussed by the Ministry of Finance. I would like to just reiterate that the Ministry of East African Community Affairs will continue contributing to this mission towards widening and deepening economic, political, social, and cultural integration to improve the quality of life of the people of Uganda. Indeed, 2022 will be remembered as a phenomenal year for the community, following the admission of the Democratic Republic of Congo, which brought an additional nearly 100 million people, meaning that the people of East Africa have now got a bigger market. I would like to reiterate that the budget is an important tool because through it, Uganda and the rest of the governments can influence income distribution, provide services to citizens, transform the country through strategic investments. It's also worth noting that in 2007, the East African Community member states agreed to harmonize their budget readings as part of their efforts towards harmonizing their taxation regimes. This is important because when the budgets are read on the same day, to reduce the risk of policy leaks and unfair business practices. It's only in respect to Kenya, which is about to go for elections, where the budget was not read on the same day as the others. But the theme was the same: it's accelerating economic recovery and enhancing productive sectors for improved livelihood. Throughout the financial year, the member states will continue implement economic policies and practices for realization of inclusive and equitable post-COVID-19 economic recovery and EAC regional integration that works for everyone. Consensus was reached by EAC member states to verify key statistics on debt, fiscal deficit, inflation, among others, in each of the partner states. Although we have a number of agreed upon customs and tariffs due in July, we hope that all our countries will be able to implement them to enhance the business environment in the region, to support recovery, and facilitate industrialization and structural change. On 6 May 2022, the ministers in charge of trade and finance adopted 35% as the fourth band of the EAC common external tariff. The common external tariff with the East African Community Customs Union has long been considered the cornerstone of the successful example of regional integration in sub-Saharan Africa. It's one of the key instruments under the Customs Union pillar which justifies regional integration through uniform treatment of goods imported from third parties. The implementation of the reviewed common external tariff shall commence on 1st July 2022. Additionally, the reviewed common external tariff will address a request for states of application which distort the EAC common external tariff. Another positive step in the promotion of in the industrial sector will be the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. This we hope would spur intra-regional trade by encouraging local manufacturing, value addition, and industrialization. Regional economic communities such as this EAC are building blocks for the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. There is now a strategy within the EAC to implement the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and phase 2 negotiations, negotiations on investment protocol, competition, intellectual property, and e-commerce, women and youth are now ongoing. As a community, we have made some progress to make integration fully operational. I'm optimistic that before the required actions are taken and implemented, the East African Monetary Union will be realized, and the EAC will have a single currency by 2024. At the moment, the partner states are in the final stages of selecting a country to host the East African Monetary Institute, which will later be converted into the East African Central Bank. This is an important stage for integration. It is the third step in building the community, which is just the precursor to the political federation. I would also like to add that the other arms, namely the judiciary under the East African Court of Justice, which have recently, we have amended the jurisdiction of the East African Court of Justice to deal with disputes under the Customs Union, which was originally not the position. I'm also happy and I'm glad that we are here with the members of the East African Legislative Assembly who are doing a really good job in legislating for the region, monitoring and carrying out oversight about what is going on. However, as the African continent, many of our states are struggling to collect sufficient revenues. Many have failed to reach the 15% of GDP levels. Debt to GDP ratios are increasing, surpassing the thresholds under the East African Monetary Union convergence criteria. There are concerns of rising debt levels, cost of debt servicing, not only in Uganda or the East African community, but in Africa in general. The increasing debt levels have affected government's ability to stimulate economic growth, including exports, imposing pressure on foreign reserves and budget resources, leading to deterioration and the inability to deliver critical services. This could lead countries to face significant debt service costs in the future. We are hoping that within the community, if we can attain the full customs union and the common market, a number of challenges, which include the non-tariff barriers, trade blockades, enclosure of border posts, would come to an end. Although in May 2022, Uganda and Tanzania agreed to eliminate all non-tariff barriers hindering trade between the two countries, there are still a few areas that we need to work on. I just want to reassure the people of Uganda that within the next 2 months, I propose to go to Tanzania to have a bilateral meeting on the outstanding NTBs so that they are also handled. Some of these include unfair laws, regulations, administrative and technical requirements other than tariffs imposed by partner states, whose effect is to impede trade. There are major concerns for business community in the region. In some areas, they are not allowed to move with their national IDs. These are issues that we need to handle so that our people are able to benefit from the Common Market Protocol. Also, I hope you're aware that most of our countries trade more with the countries outside the East African community than within ourselves. That's another area we need to work on to ensure that we support the Common Market Protocol in the community. There are revenue shortfalls among almost all the partner states. Continue to struggle to collect revenues, to finance their budgets, dealing with the challenges of brought by COVID pandemic, and now the war in Ukraine and Russia. It is my hope that this important dialogue will contribute to yielding solutions and proposals towards addressing the current debt crisis, trade imbalances, turbulent relations among EAC partner states, non-tariff barriers, among other pressing challenges within the region. Let me thank the National Budget Month for organizing this meeting, URA, Ciatini, our ministry, and other partners for this dialogue, which has brought different stakeholders together to discuss revenue mobilization, utilization, and accountability policies and practices. Let me commend the Ministry of Finance and the Uganda Revenue Authority for this arrangement and working closely with civil society to create awareness about the priorities and strategies for the financial year. I welcome you for this dialogue and wish you successful deliberations. But before I leave, I noticed that many of you are not wearing masks. I'm not the Minister of Health, but we need to start wearing masks again. You are not free yet. COVID is still here, so please do the needful. Thank you very much, and I wish you successful deliberation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Right Honorable Rebecca Aditwala Kadaga, First Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for the East African Affairs Community. Now, we want to get a photograph with you before you take leave. It's a humble request. I will ask Madame Naluga to actually take upon that duty. Now, as that is taking place, just to take you back to why we are all in this room gathered here today, accelerating economic recovery and enhancing productive sectors for improved livelihood in the East African region, defining joint strategies for a faster recovery. A request for our partners to come forth for a photo moment with Honorable Rebecca Aditwala Kadaga. Our partners include Ciatini, Strengthening Africa in World Trade. We do have the East African Community, and also this event is brought to you by the Ministry of East African Community Affairs. We are also partnering with the Uganda Revenue Authority, that is celebrating 30 years of existence, but more so supporting government, especially the Ministry of Finance Planning and Economic Development, in collecting revenue that supports the budget for the financial year that we are focusing on, 2022-2023. I shall require smiles. Thank you very much. Yes, the eyes can smile also. Next on the agenda, we are going to be also receiving opening remarks from the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. But as we go on about that, we are bringing this event live to you on NTV Uganda. It's also streaming live on URA TV, as well as here Tini YouTube channel is streaming live. So for our online audience, the hashtags for engagement, the hashtags for questions, the hashtags for your contributions are as follows. On social media engagements, we will be capturing your opinions and your say. Hashtag East African Community Budget 2022. So briefly, ESC Budget 2022. Another hashtag we're going to be looking for is Yatini on Budget 2022. And then hashtag Tax Justice UG. So I'm going to go through the hashtags once again. Hashtag ESC Budget 22. We do have Siatini on Budget 22 and also Tax Justice UG. Those will be the hashtags from which we shall be capturing your views, your comments, and your contributions from your capacities. Now, next on our agenda, we do have an opening remark. This opening remark is supposed to be presented by the Minister of Finance, Honorable Matia Kasaija, but in his absentia, we will be having Mr. Moses Kagwa taking on representation of the ministry. Mr. Moses Kagwa represents and is under the Directorship of Economic Affairs, the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. Mr. Kagwa, you're most welcome.
Don't have a sanitizer. The Right Honorable Rebecca Alitwala Kadaga, she's gone, but First Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of East African Affairs, Honorable Members of Parliament present, Honorable Members of the East African Legislative Assembly, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm reading this speech on behalf of Honorable Matia Kasaija, who couldn't be here because he's been summoned for other urgent state duties. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to this high-level post-East African Community Tax Budget Dialogue for financial year 2022-23. I would like to thank the organizers and all of you who have spared your time to contribute to this dialogue. This is timely as we continue to face the unprecedented economic challenges occasioned by the continuing negative impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Russia-Ukraine conflict, rising worldwide inflation, and massive disruptions to supply chains. I welcome these engagements to enhance awareness and education about the Council of Ministers' decisions, in particular, the East African fiscal policy in general. As Uganda, we embrace opportunities to dialogue with civil society and the wider citizenry to increase participation in the process of policy formulation and to better inform policy making. Distinguished participants, as we are all aware, Uganda is a member of the East African community, and as such, we participate in the various processes of the community and are required to enforce the decisions of the community in accordance with the program. My keynote address will focus on the highlights of the EAC Council of Ministers' decisions for financial year 2022-2023. However, I will also highlight the decisions of the Coordination Committee, this is the permanent secretaries, since the ministerial session hasn't been convened yet. Nevertheless, usually the recommendations of the permanent secretaries are adopted by the ministers. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the budget for financial year 2022-23 and the medium term focuses on policy interventions to restore the economy to pre-pandemic levels and accelerate the pace of social economic transformation. Therefore, the budget for financial year 2022-23 is premised on the need for full monetization of Uganda's economy through commercial agriculture, industrialization, expanding and broadening services, digital transformation, and broadening market access. This dovetails with the budget theme of the EAC, which is accelerating economic recovery and enhancing productive sectors for improved livelihood. In this regard, my ministry proposed to maintain the protective rates ranging from 25% to 60% instead of 0, 10, and 25% on goods manufactured in Uganda for a period of 1 year. These are majorly products where Uganda has a competitive advantage, and they include meat and meat offals, fresh and chilled potatoes, sausages and similar products, chewing gum, other sugar confectionaries, chocolates, biscuits, tomato paste and sauce, honey, ready-to-drink juices, ginger, jams, processed tea, and coffee, among others. In addition, we propose to extend duty remission to essential inputs used by manufacturers under the EAC duty remission scheme. These inputs are taxed at reduced rates, either 0% or 10% for a period of 1 year. The normal rates are usually 10% or 25%. This is aimed at reducing the cost of inputs and hence the cost of doing business in Uganda. Some of these inputs include those that are used in the manufacture of textiles, footwear, and assembly of motorcycles, among others. In this regard, the Coordination Committee of the East African Community Council of Ministers adopted partner states budget proposals for the financial year 2020-23. The detailed proposals will be published in the EAC Gazette, usually by 30th June. Distinguished participants, as you may be aware, the partner states have been reviewing the EAC Common External Tariff since 2016. The Common External Tariff are the import duty rates that are applicable to goods that are coming into the East African community. I'm delighted to inform you that the partner states have reached consensus on a revised 4-band structure, thus bringing the comprehensive review to a close. Namely, 1 is the minimum rate of 0% duty to be levied on imports of raw materials and capital goods. 2, a middle rate of 10% duty to be charged on imports of intermediate inputs. 3, a duty rate of 25% on imports of finished products not readily available in the EAC. And 4, a rate of 35% to be levied on imports of finished goods readily available in the EAC region and on imported goods where the community is building capacity, such as textiles, iron and steel, footwear, among others. 5 rates of duty above 35% were retained for goods considered sensitive in the region, for instance, rice, maize, sugar, and milk. Therefore, the Coordination Committee adopted 35% rate as the 4th band and directed that the implementation of the revised ESC CET should commence from 1st July 2022. The Coordination Committee also agreed to the flexible application of the revised Common External Tariff due to the current economic realities. As such, Uganda is implementing the revised CET, the 35% maximum rate, in a phased manner. Since financial year 2019-2020, Uganda has been imposing 35% and 60% instead of the CET 25% on some goods to protect infant industries, incentivize domestic production, and raise revenue, among others. Thus, the Coordination Committee of the Council granted Uganda's request to 1, apply 35% to all products where Uganda has been imposing 35% via stays of application instead of 25. This is effective 1st July 2022 in accordance with the directive of the Coordination Committee. 2, maintain 60% for 1 year up to 30th June 2023 to products where Uganda requested to impose 60%. These products include imported Irish potatoes, juices, processed coffee and tea, ginger, chicken products, meat and meat products, peanut butter, bread spreads, onions, cotton seed oil, sunflower oil, butter, sausages, biscuits, tomato sauce, mineral water, toilet paper, and ballpoint pens. I therefore request industries protected at 60% to prepare adequately and adjust appropriately during this transition period, effective financial year 2023-2024. All these products will attract 35% import duty instead of 60%. Distinguished participants, the Coordination Committee considered and adopted the draft EAC e-commerce strategy, which provides for inclusive use of e-commerce by consumers, businesses, and the public sectors through digitally enabled businesses within the EAC. The strategy has 6 strategic goals with the intended outcome of increasing economic activity and value across all sectors of the economy in order to develop effective regional value chains. Distinguished participants, as you're aware, among the majority of the East African partner states ratified the agreement for establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area and are ready to commence trading. However, before trading could start, we had to submit the EAC tariff offer to the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, which we did. Therefore, the Coordination Committee of the Council of Ministers took note that the EAC tariff offer for Category A had been technically verified by the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat and stands at 91% to be liberalized over a 10-year period from the start of trading. 2, directed the Secretariat to gazette the EAC tariff offer for Category A products for implementation by 1st July 2022. And 3, directed the EAC Secretariat to align the EAC tariff offer for the Category A products with the revised EAC CET, which has a 4-band tariff structure. Distinguished and adopted the EAC schedule of specific commitments on trade in services under the African Continental Free Trade Area. I take this opportunity to encourage the private sector to adequately prepare to take advantage of the opportunities under the African Continental Free Trade Area. Once again, I would like to thank the organizers for organizing this dialogue. To the distinguished participants, thank you for sparing your valuable time to come and attend this dialogue. I hope that the information shared will assist us better understand the EAC fiscal regime and regional development agenda for God and my country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moses Kagwa, Director, Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. He just shared with us an address from the Minister of Finance, Uganda, that is Honorable Matia Kasaija. Now, just to give you some house rules, the format of this dialogue is a televised dialogue, both on TV. We are running it on NTV Uganda, URA TV, Siatini YouTube channel, as well as Smart TV. And it's going to be running up to 1 p.m. here at the Kampala Serena Hotel. Now, in observation of that, you do have cameras around the room to help our online audience to be as much engaging and participatory to this dialogue. And so we are humbly requesting that you minimize movements front of camera. Please ensure that you pass behind the cameras in case you need to make a movement from where you are to where you want to go. But also enjoy the bottle of water that is in front of you. It's going to be a long morning into the afternoon. Next on our agenda, we are going to be having representation from the Uganda Revenue Authority. Now, speaking of revenue, due to the shortage of revenue in the East African community, you do have the East African countries having had to increasingly rely on debt to finance their development. As of October 2022, the region was mad in debts to a tune of 120 billion US dollars. This will likely worsen by the existing economic shocks. And in order to pay off this ever increasing debt, countries such as Uganda ourselves, we've had to rely increasingly on indirect taxes such as the VAT, which is rather regressive. But why should I talk taxes when we do have the tax collector in the house? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome with me representation from URA, Mr. Ibrahim Bosa Chibuka, who is the Assistant Commissioner, Public and Corporate Affairs.
Thank you very much, moderator, and a very good morning. I bring greetings from the Commissioner General of the Uganda Revenue Authority, who would have loved to be here with you. In his absence, I will take the singular honor to be able to read out his remarks to you. Our chief guest, the leadership of the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, the leadership of the ASIATI, Uganda, officials from the ministry, business community, political religious leaders, members of civil society, the URA staff here representing us, members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to you all. And I thank God for this day and for the opportunity to be before you this morning to address you. Thank you for the invitation, where we can be able to discuss and understand, especially the opportunities and possibilities that come with the new budgeting process for the next financial year. As you are aware, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development unveiled a new financial year's 48 trillion budget last week. Of this figure, 25.5 trillion, which is about 53% of the budget, is to be financed from taxes and non-tax revenue sourced internally, and the rest from aids and grants. Ladies and gentlemen, much as we are supposed to contribute 53% towards this budget, our ultimate national aspirations is to attain economic independence, where our national expenditure is fully funded domestically by all of us. No nation attains true sovereignty without the ability to fully fund its expenditure without relying on external help, and our hope of getting external support is also dwindling very fast, simply because our lenders are also focusing on themselves. Our current tax to GDP ratio has stagnated at 13%, below the average 16% of the sub-Saharan Africa. This has placed us in a position where we must turn to external borrowing, which often comes with unfavorable terms and conditions. Developed countries collect more than 30% of their tax to GDP. And research has shown that for any country to develop, it must collect at least 20% of GDP. And we at the Uganda Revenue Authority are convinced that it is possible if every tax eligible citizen plays their civic duty. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development did not announce any new taxes because statistics have shown that we have the potential to raise this revenue and more if all eligible citizens pay their fair share. I must point out that improvements have been made by way of a few amendments in the income tax, the VAT tax, the Tax Procedures Code Act, the Stamp Duty Act, and the Tax Appeals Tribunal Act. All these are purposed to further streamline revenue mobilization and to ease tax compliance. Unregistered traders and undeclared employment dominate our economy. The current tax register has about 2.4 million taxpayers out of a population of 45 million Ugandans. There are over 7 million people engaged in income generating activities, but many are not contributing to the tax basket. So realizing the new revenue target is a collective effort and commitment across government, civil society, private sector, and development partners, and this is paramount. At the Uganda Revenue Authority, we have instituted mechanisms to improve our efficiency in service delivery to enhance taxpayer compliance towards realizing this new target. These initiatives are all in line with the government's domestic revenue mobilization strategy. And what are we doing? We are engaging in taxpayer education, service and communication, where we have developed and rolled out a full taxpayer education and improvement service delivery strategy to promote transparency, information sharing, partnership with stakeholders, and facilitating taxpayers through improved service provision and basically focusing on aspects of stakeholder engagement, intensive tax education, simplified and automated processes to enhance voluntary compliance, usage of sector-based approach to customer satisfaction, adoption of the use of mobile tax offices. We currently have one mobile tax office, which, if you have seen, called the Tujenge bus, and we're expecting 2 more so that we are able to be in places in this country where we do not have physical offices. We have also improved client support through an upgraded contact center that is state-of-the-art. We are also engaged in data management and analytics. In line with the budget theme, which is highlighting digital transformation, we have embarked on the consolidation of the use of smart business solutions we introduced over the past couple of years. I think predominantly many know the digital tax stamps, the electronic physical receipting and invoicing solutions, which are there to improve the collection of local excise duty and the value-added tax heads respectively. We have also adopted the alternative dispute and conflict resolution. We have also adopted a faster and tax dispute resolution through independent reviews and alternative dispute resolution platforms. We are also uplifting the human resource capacity at the Uganda Revenue Authority. Internally, we have equally recommitted ourselves to be more efficient, transparent, and accountable in what we do. We are deliberately promoting accountability amongst all our staff, guided by the values of patriotism, integrity, and professionalism. And at this note, would want to thank the government of Uganda that has supported us in the recruitment of 600 new staff that we received yesterday. As I conclude, as we end this financial year in the coming 10 days or so, I extend my appreciation to all of you for your continued support to develop our country by honoring your tax obligations. Your selfless contribution amidst the global economic hardship is commendable. Our target for this financial year was 22.4 trillion, and we're optimistic that together we are going to achieve it come June 30th of this month. As of yesterday, we were at 20.5 trillion, and we need only 2 trillion to finish this financial year successfully. So for those of you who have not been paying taxes, it is not too late. There is room to correct any previous mistakes. URA is working towards a data-driven approach to taxation. The third-party information already in our domain and that which we expect to receive from our third-party partners for the next financial year will enrich our risk profiling of taxpayers and inform more targeted audits and investigations. As we close the current financial year and file our income tax returns, I call upon each of you not to tire from meeting your tax obligations. Declare fully your income and enable us determine the correct taxes or the correct position due to you. This is the highest form of demonstrating individual integrity and personal responsibility as a fully committed citizen to seeing Uganda prosper. As the Uganda Revenue Authority, we are committed to doing everything within our might to ensure that the revenue mobilization gains achieved in the past 2 financial years are not only consolidated, but further improved upon. I wish you a successful discussion. For God and my country, John Musinguzi, Commissioner General of the Uganda Revenue Authority. I submit.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ibrahim Bosa Chibuka. That was the remarks that are focusing on the East African Council of Ministers' decision for the financial year 2022 into 2023. Now, in regards to this background, the National Budget Month partners, including the Ministry of Finance Planning and Economic Development, including the Uganda Revenue Authority, Cfta Uganda, among others, have organized the Post-East African Community Tax and Budget Dialogue under the theme Accelerating Economic Recovery and Enhancing Productive sectors to improve livelihood in the East African regions, and they're focusing on defining joint strategies for a faster recovery. Of course, one of the specific objectives out of this dialogue are understanding the various measures passed by the East African Council of Ministers in the financial year 2022-2023 and their implication on regional integration process, equip Ugandans and key stakeholders with relevant knowledge and information on tax, on debt, trade, and other fiscal related issues to inspire informed debates and effective citizen participation. On that note, we then move on to the next issue on our agenda. Second on our agenda this morning, leveraging the African Continental Free Trade Area to accelerate economic recovery and enhancing productive sectors for improved livelihood. Presentation is going to be focusing on the link between the domestic revenue mobilization and the African Continental Free Trade Area. And here to give us this presentation is Ms. Jen Nalunga, who's the Executive Director with Cfta Uganda.
Thank you so much, Regina, and good morning once again. Our presentation, Siatini and other partners, is about the CFTA. We are linking the CFTA to domestic resource mobilization within the East African region. Most often, when we talk about the CFTA, we talk about the opportunities there, but what are the link between the Continental Free Trade Area and our domestic resource mobilization, with increased trade within the CFTA help us to fill the fiscal gap, because all the previous speakers have been talking about a fiscal gap within Uganda, but within the entire region. So we need to understand the CFTA and its link to domestic resource mobilization. But maybe also this presentation will help us to link more trade and revenue mobilization, the economy, how the economy is performing, and fiscal challenges. As an introduction, the CFTA puts in place a common market for 55 African states that are members of the African Union. 54 countries have signed. One country hasn't. You know the country, Eritrea hasn't, even up to now, signed the CFTA. And 43 countries have already ratified. And maybe for the East African countries, it's only Southern Sudan which hasn't ratified the CFTA. The rest of the East African countries have ratified the CFTA. And by number of participating countries, the CFTA is it's the largest free trade area globally. The agreement seeks to establish a continental customs union. That's the aspiration anyway. The Continental Customs Union. And those of you who read history, when you remember the Lagos Plan of Action, that was the plan that we are going to have one continental customs union. And that will help us also to negotiate with third parties like the European Union. And it sticks, the CFTA, the agreement, sets out to reduce or remove tariffs among member states and introduce common rates for goods and services. Also, the agreement is looking at reducing and removal of non-tariff barriers. That's just a graphical presentation of how many countries have signed, how many countries have we'll go to another, have ratified. A number of researchers estimate that this agreement, if fully implemented, it has so many promises. We lift 30 million people out of extreme poverty, and that's a World Bank study. And that the real gains from the full implementation of the CFTA, but we increase by 7% by 2035 to nearly 450 billion US dollars. That there is also potential to boost intra-African trade by 52.3% if import duties are eliminated, and also double that trade if non-tariff barriers are reduced. So what's the problem? Although the potential, we have seen the promises and the potential, there are concerns about the revenue losses in the short and medium term as a result of the removal of tariffs on imported commodities. When you look at the tariff schedules, and director from Economic Policy, Minister of Finance, has raised these issues about the tariff liberalization. We are supposed to liberalize 90% of our tariff lines. Non-sensitive products, 7% sensitive. Sensitive products are those products which have elements of food security, of fiscal revenue, and also in industrialization. So for 7%, we are supposed as non-LDC like Uganda to reduce our tariffs after 10 years, and for developing countries 13 years. They have excluded 3%, totally excluded them. So in total, we are liberalizing 97% of our tariff lines, our trade with the rest of Africa. However, there are no clear mitigation strategies to deal with the expected fiscal deficits, especially for economies which are heavily reliant on custom duties. How are they going to fund their budgets? That fiscal gap, how are they going to fund that? There is a hope that when you liberalize, when you trade goes up, that it will compensate for the taxes, but this is in the long term. So, and what we have seen also is that international trade taxes contribute a lot. In some countries, like the table below, in some countries it goes up to more than 50%. The table below, please. The table below shows the domestic taxes against the customs. The orange, the customs revenue from trade, international trade. So you see there are some countries which really depend on custom duties, customs revenue. Therefore, go down. Siatini and some other partners, we are undertaking a study to examine the extent to which EAC partner states rely on international trade taxes to finance their domestic budgets. Then 2, to ascertain which countries contribute mostly to EAC international trade. More specifically, EAC partner states trading mostly within Africa or from elsewhere. And this will determine the impact of the Cfta reduction in taxes. And also want to assess the extent to which the Cfta is likely to affect international trade taxes for each partner states. This is an ongoing study. And we are looking for more data, and we also are looking for more information. So these are just preliminary findings, but they are flagging out the issue that we need to be aware of a fiscal gap when we liberalize under the Cfta. That's the methodology. We have used information from those reports, and we have also done secondary data analysis. Down, apart. The importance of customs revenue in EAC. When you look at that table, it shows that domestic taxes revenue contribute more than half to tax revenues in the EAC, but also customs revenue play an important role in funding national budgets. When you look at Uganda, it's up the other. Uganda, it's 42%. Burundi, the green one is, those are the domestic taxes. The red one are the customs taxes. For Uganda, it's 58. Domestic taxes, customs, 42%. And those are the countries, Burundi, Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda. Go down. The second table, the table below, indicates import revenue sources, import duties as a percentage of total tax revenue across the years from 2015 to 2019. For Uganda, 2015 up to 23% in 2019, and for the 5 years, the average is 23% of total tax revenue, import duties as a percentage of total tax revenues. The next slide is an assessment of whether EAC partners states are trading with each other. The trading, EAC partners trading in Africa. For the EAC member states import mostly from outside Africa. We are not importing from Africa. And at least a quarter of imports in Rwanda and Burundi are, however, from Africa. Imports from Africa for Uganda accounts for 23%. So when you look at Kenya and Tanzania, they import very little from Africa. So the extent to which we are importing from Africa will determine the impact on our fiscal revenues when we are negotiating or signing the CFTA. The next slide, again, it shows, again, we are looking at our trade, you know, with the rest of Africa, and our share of trade with the rest of Africa, the imports. You go down. Then we ask ourselves, why do African countries import mostly from outside Africa? You know, because you remember that CFTA is about boosting intra-Africa trade, which is very low. But we are looking at what are those challenges. Why aren't we trading within Africa? Because one, we produce similar products. These are agricultural commodities and minerals. Two, there are also challenges of infrastructure. And these are the challenges which are going to affect the CFTA, you know, because it's really difficult, even when you are traveling, to travel from here to North Africa, you know. To go to Morocco, you have to go outside the continent, then come back to the continent. So when you look at the infrastructure, we are wired to go to our colonial masters, you know, so the issue of infrastructure is very, very important. Then issues of political conflicts, which also affect the markets. So the implication is that even when we sign the CFTA agreement, it's not a sufficient condition to increase EAC trade with the rest of Africa. And the person who did this study is within this room. Isaac is there, and I agree with that analysis. Again, that table also indicates the state of our intra-EAC trade as East Africa. EAC partner states, are we trading among among ourselves. And we found out that Rwanda, Burundi, and Uganda import mostly within the EAC. Kenya and Tanzania, on the other hand, import mostly from outside the EAC bloc. And that graph is it's an average of 5 years when it comes to importing within the EAC and importing within the EAC region. Again, the next table is again about our trade, the share of imports from Africa for Uganda, Burundi, Rwanda, and Kenya and Tanzania. For Uganda, Burundi, and Rwanda, our share of imports they have been increasing, while Kenya and Tanzania, their share of imports from Africa has been going down. And that's why you find Kenya is negotiating also a lot with they want to negotiate the economic partnership agreement with the European Union, and that will also increase imports from the European Union. Okay, so the next slide is about the implication of the Cfta on EAC revenue. There are two ways through which the EAC will lose customs revenue as a result of the Cfta. Automatically, one, when we reduce our revenue, the negotiations which Mr. Kagwa was talking about, when we reduce 90%, our tariffs in category A, automatically we are losing revenue. But maybe the second way will be through trade diversion, by countries outside Africa exporting to other destinations as a result of increased tariffs in Africa. So that again, we need to look at how we negotiate with third parties after we have negotiated among ourselves as Africa. So the next slide, the conservative estimates by researchers at the EPRC suggest that in terms of absolute amounts, Kenya will incur the largest loss, followed by Uganda at 14.2 million US dollars and US dollars 13.5 million respectively. EPRC did a study, and I think Isaac, Mr. Shinyenko, it's on your website, isn't it? You can refer to that, because that's also a heavy loss, which we can see how, if it's true, how we can, we need to strategize on how to address that fiscal gap. For Tanzania, it's 5.3 million. Burundi, it's also there. Rwanda is there. But that study says, in terms of proportional losses of tariff revenue, Burundi will incur the largest proportion of 30%, followed by Uganda 7.6%, Rwanda 5.5%, and Kenya 4%, and Tanzania 3.7%. So what are the lessons for the EAC as we prepare for the Cfta? There will certainly be revenue loss for each of the participating countries, at least in the short and medium term. The revenue loss automatically is there. There is a need to effectively participate in the ongoing tariff negotiations. In the tariff negotiations, the negotiators have completed category A. There is negotiations for category B and category C. So effective implementation of the Cfta will start after the member states have defined their schedule of tariff concessions, because the tariff concessions are part of the agreement. Although officially trading under the Cfta was supposed to start January 1st, 2021. It hasn't effectively started because of those tariff negotiations. And as that director pointed out, category A is done, but category B and category C is yet to be conclusively concluded. Way forward, each partner state should put in place measures internally to cover up the revenue shortfall. So when you are planning for revenues, my brothers and sisters in URA, there is that revenue loss shortfall in the short and medium term, which we need to address. Then there is a need to leverage the envisaged increase in volumes and value of trade for other broad-based taxes such as VAT to compensate for customs revenue losses. No, because the assumption is that we open up the CFTA, we are losing the customs revenue, but we can compensate with other taxes. Therefore, the onus is upon the governments of the respective EAC countries to strengthen institutional quality in tax revenue administration to minimize the revenue losses. But the entire issue is to know that there is a revenue gap and to be able to plan for that. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jen Nalunga, Executive Director, Siatini, Uganda, for that address. Of course, she was talking about the African Continental Trade-Free Area, and her presentation was bearing in mind the fact that we can actually have the link between domestic revenue mobilization and the Africa Continental Trade-Free Area. Of course, also her presentation was majorly focusing on the extent upon which this trade-free area is likely to affect international trade taxes for each of the partner states and the potential opportunities for boosting domestic revenue mobilizations as a result of implementation of it. And one of the questions that has been raised from her address, will potential domestic revenues expected increase trade within the region? Are they going to help fill the fiscal gaps, at least in the long run? That's a question that has raised eyebrows. And also through her submission, are there strategies in the Africa Continental Trade-Free Area Agreement to help partner states that largely depend on international trade taxes, and are they going to be able to fill the budget deficits in the short run? So those are questions that are yet to be answered. Well, we are in good time, because then the panel that is coming up next may give us direction in that regard and help us answer those two questions. And this panel is going to be sharing their perspective on the presentation above. So ladies and gentlemen, now into the meat of this dialogue, where we get to focus on some of these subject matters. Allow me to introduce to you our first panel for this morning. We do have Mr. Moses Kagwa. Mr. Moses Kagwa is the Director Economic Affairs under the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. Mr. Moses Kagwa, you are most welcome to the panel. Our generic theme is accelerating economic recovery and enhancing productive sectors for improved livelihood in the East African region, and of course defining joint strategies for a faster recovery. By joint strategies, we are looking at the East African community that has Uganda, it has Rwanda, it has Kenya, it has Tanzania, it has Burundi, South Sudan, and most recently the DRC that has joined the East African community. Now joining Mr. Moses Kagwa is Mr. Simon Kaheru, who's going to be joining us online. He is the chair, the East African Business Council, Uganda chapter. He'll be joining us online. Mr. Simon Kaheru, you are most welcome to this dialogue.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone.
He is going to be joined also by Dr. Geoffrey Owich Okaka. Dr. Geoffrey Owich Okaka is the Assistant Commissioner, Trade Uganda Revenue Authority. You're most welcome, Mr. Owich. And then finally on our panel online, joining us is Mr. Donald Tindamanyire, who's the Principal Customs Officer, Tariffs, Valuation and Rules of Origin, and that is the East African Community Secretariat. Good morning to you, Mr. Donald.
Good morning and thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Here to moderate this dialogue is Dr. Fred Muhumza, who's a senior economist. Dr. Fred Muhumza, you are most welcome.
Good morning. Hope it is still morning. Sometimes we sit in meetings online with Indians and we think it is afternoon when it is still morning, or with the Japanese who are even far east. A very interesting conversation for people viewing us from wherever you are. I want to avoid some questions that should not come to this meeting on why was it not a panel but a manual. After all, I have a seat the other side. Madam Jane Nalonga, you cannot survive coming back to this podium to answer any question that may be pending to you. As you come, I will ask my panelists who are in the house to begin with. 2 minutes, what do you have to say about the theme of the day? I know I have questions for you, but a blank check is always in order in hard times like this. When you invoice the bank, what do you think are your problems? Let me begin with the one who looks like himself, in the middle. You know what that means? That uniform is authority, right? I always tell people I don't stop because a police officer has stopped me. I stop to the uniform. If I find them without that uniform, I'll pass them. So let's start with the uniform.
Okay, yeah. Yes, good morning, viewers and participants. I'm Dr. Kaka Geoffrey Owich. I'm the Assistant Commissioner Trade in the Customs Department of Uganda Revenue Authority. Yeah, my brief comment on the theme of today, looking at leveraging the African Continental Free Trade Area to accelerate economic recovery and enhancing productive sector for the improved livelihood, being the theme. Yeah, when you look at the whole perspective in the EAC per se, the way they align themselves to this theme, the first aspect is to look at the budget itself in terms of the volume, the value. When you look at the budget itself, you find that EAC within Kenya had the highest budget of 28.62, and then followed by Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi. This is self-explanatory, saying that in that aspect that Kenya has the biggest budget, reflecting the size of the economy. But when you look at the whole budgets within the EAC, we see that all budget is directed towards a recovery from the effect of the COVID, the pandemic. And in this case, you find that Tanzania, their budget aim, it aimed at accelerating recovery and strengthening and sustaining growth. For Kenya, the aim is accelerating growth in an uncertain times. And for Uganda, we are looking at full monetization of Uganda's economy through commercial agriculture. And basically, these are aspects that you will see ourselves being aligned. And that's briefly what I can talk about the theme of the budget today.
Thank you very much. Commission Director Kagwa.
I think the theme resonates well with the intentions or the aspirations in the East African community that we need to recover from the adverse effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. We have had a lot of issues that we've suffered. We've had increasing debt during COVID-19 because all of us had to borrow to ensure that we safeguard lives and livelihoods. In that difficult time, we suffered huge shortfalls in taxation. We also realized that during this period, there are things that we can do as countries that we should stop relying on imports and replace them. We saw how we went digital. That time we had meetings in Zoom, which we still have. We moved away from conferences like this. We also started being innovative. In manufacturing, we started manufacturing products from our countries, sanitizers. We are putting up pharmaceutical plants to try and do away with this. And really the move is to try and see that as much as possible that we harness our productive capacities going forward. So yes, the theme is really very, very important for recovery. Thank you.
Now, staying with you, Director Kagwa, I think you have excited people by saying no new taxes in the next budget. And but this is about defining joint strategies. What did the other partners do? Are they also on no new taxes? Did they completely remove some taxes? Did they introduce new ones? How is the harmonization in the tax space working for us going forward?
Well, of course, we talked about non-new taxes as Uganda because we are trying to ensure that we help businesses to recover, and we also don't increase the costs to pass on the costs to the consumers. We also noted that a lot of work we can do to collect more taxes, as long as the taxes are clear, as long as they are simplified, and then as long as they are enforced. In the other partner states, some changes were made, but most of these, for example, in Kenya, were to reduce. They are trying to see how they can use the tax system to promote businesses, to promote consumption, and in a bit of that also in Tanzania. But overall, it was more of clarification of the taxes to make the taxes simple. When you talk about harmonization, we are still struggling as a region to try to harmonize because national interests are still prominent. And the initiatives we have really attempted to ensure that we harmonize taxes have not been very successful. We had started with taxes that are excisable, taxes on soft drinks, taxes on beer, because we thought that was the easiest as we move into the region. But the pace has been slow because we wanted to harmonize not only the rates, but also the bases, so that when we talk about excise and what it's applicable upon, then it should be the same. But we haven't received consensus, and of course this has been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, when we couldn't really meet and try to handle most of these issues. When we look also at the VAT space, we try to harmonize the basis. What is VAT, so that everybody understands when this tax is payable. We try to look at the schedules for exemptions and zero rating, what we should include in zero rating, what should be included in exemptions. But we haven't also agreed on that. It is something that is on the table, but not yet agreed. Even the rates themselves, we have not yet harmonized them, because some people don't want to come down and others don't want to come up. But it's a process. And I think on the whole, there have been some movements towards harmonization, but it hasn't yet happened. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Kagwa. It is always a process, and want to find out whether the private sector is playing their role in that process. And private sector here is not Jane Nalunga and Siatini, but you actually have the East African Business Council, and Simon Kaheru is out there. I don't know whether he's on the other side of the DRC, and he couldn't go through the volcanoes. But wherever you are, Simon, you'll tell us. But we're trying to find out what has been the role of the East African Business Council in this process of integration that seems to be slower than I want to believe the private sector would want it to be. Simon, wherever you are, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. I am still within the East African community. I'm actually in Kigali right now for the Commonwealth Business Forum under Chogam 22. So I'm at work with you. But Siatini, thank you very much for hosting this conversation and putting us in the same room with eminent people who are running one side of the economy. And Fred, you're right. The government experts, Moses and Mr. cannot achieve anything without the private sector. And I think you're even more correct when you say the private sector has a more major role to play. Now, the East African Business Council is the apex body of the private sector in East Africa. And our principal role is to activate that same private sector involvement in EAC integration. EAC integration, what all the partner states agreed from the start was that it was not going to be left to the governments to integrate, because governments can't tell the people to work together, to trade, to interact, to intermarry. They can do so, but the people will not respond. It was very clear from the experiences before, the East African community, as we knew it at first, and even from other regional and trade economic blocs, that people interact with or without governments. That's how history has been. And that's why the East African community integration was very clearly stated as needing to be people-based, but private sector-led. We found that even if two governments, two political groupings across borders were not seeing eye to eye, the people on either side of that border need to live. And because of that, they would trade, they would interact. Their daughters and sons would meet and, create other East Africans. So we as East African Business Council present that private sector fund that has a number of roles. One, advocate for private sector interests, so that as the governments are making plans, creating policy and implementing those plans, the private sector interests, the interests of the people. And Fred, I must correct you, when you say private sector is not Siatini and Fred Mumza, you are part of the private sector. And even Moses Kagwa, when he walks out of his office, becomes part of the private sector. So that conversation we'll have later on. So if we ensure that those private sector interests are put at the fore as the governments are, working on this East African community integration from the formal side. We also ensure that we identify where there are barriers to integration and integration through trade. That's why we talk a lot about non-tariff barriers, unnecessary complications that stop the East African community from working as one. We identify them, work to mobilize the people, our private sector colleagues to come together with the public sector and find solutions so that trade can happen, which will then advance integration. And then one very, very important role and very crucial role that we play or seek to play as the apex body of the private sector is getting this information down to the very last man, woman in the very last corner of each of these East African community nations. The protocols that we speak about that form the East African community, that the East African community is supposed to run on, are massive documents, very heavy. They're not read by many of our people. So we have that role of breaking it down and making it easy for any trader down there to understand that there is an advantage if they can identify it and then push it forward. We give them information through the business and trade associations, which form the East African Business Council, as well as through the different companies and organizations. So we provide advisory services both ways, to the people and to the governments. And then we keep our private sector players engaged and motivated to think East Africa, to operate East African, even if they're running an entity that's only active in Uganda or Rwanda. By highlighting to them that, for instance, the DRC is joining the community, we get them to think bigger, start looking for bigger opportunities. Not everybody is going to be trading in Rolexes on the street corner. Some of them have got to start thinking bigger about popularizing Rolex in the DRC, for instance, which will then create more opportunities for poultry farmers in Uganda, and so on and so forth. So there are many connections that we try to put together, and you find that the East African Business Council consists, like I said, of those associations, but also the most forward-thinking companies and organizations who bring what they know, their experiences, to bear and build capacity among the other private sector players who sometimes we will call them small and medium enterprises, and the Juakali ones. We still have a lot of work to do. And you're right, we want EAC integration to move faster. We will continue to be impatient so that we trigger acceleration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and glad to see some clouds behind you. That must be the Rio Chigali that I know. It might be about rain, country over 1,000 hills. I want to cross over and stay in the clouds. We call it online, we call it in the clouds. And bring in Donald Tindamanyire from the EAC Secretariat. And I think there is business there to develop or harmonize or operationalize the common external tariff. Is that good for domestic revenue mobilization? Knowing very well, as Director Kagwa here has mentioned, we still have some unilateralism, protectionism at individual level, and then the common external tariff is supposed to be speaking to the integration. So what is your experience, Mr. Tindamanyire, wherever you are? You will also tell us which space that is. Is he able to connect? Or his cloud has shifted? Okay.
Yes, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yeah, thank you. Once again, good morning. And I just want to reassure you that I'm within East Africa, currently near Entebbe. And on the question that you have raised, indeed, the common external tariff is one of the important annex that signify our togetherness at the customs union. And to that effect, we embarked into a comprehensive review of the common external tariff, which one among the objective was to promote value addition activities within the region in order to spur industrialization especially on sectors where as EAC we have a comparative advantage. As Director Kagwa had submitted, we are happy to note that after 4 years of the review, finally partner states have agreed to introduce the fourth ban, where some of the products have been assigned higher rates of 35%. But we also have cases where raw materials, which when we started implementing the customs union, were attracting 0%. As the region, we've now developed capacity to manufacture them. So they've now been moved to 10%. But we also have cases where intermediate products, which we are attracting 10%. But again, our private sector have developed capacity and hence they need to protect them. So they have now been moved to 25%. Now, when it comes to uniform application, as it was alluded earlier, the council in some cases have allowed or granted the partner states a stay of application to defer the CET rate and in cases to apply a higher rate or a lower rate. As it was earlier submitted for Republic of Uganda, you have some tariff lines like mineral water, potatoes, where you'll be applying a rate more than what the CET provides for. But the whole essence is to ensure that the nascent industry are well protected. Now, with the review, what we are expecting is that it's indeed going to mobilize domestic revenue because from the protection, it is anticipated that we have efficiency in production. Our factories are going to improve in terms of their utilized capacity, employ more people, which the outcome will be an increase in payroll taxes, that is skills development levy, as well as pay as you earn. When it comes to excisable goods, we have items like liquor, wines, mineral waters. So we are anticipating that our revenue departments are going to collect more in terms of the excise duty. But also on VAT, which is tax on consumption, it is anticipated that once we have more production, this will increase the volume of goods that will be consumed in respective partner states and thus increase the taxes in terms of VAT. Now, we also have an aspect of corporate tax where we believe since our factories will be fully utilized, it means the profit that they are going to realize will have an impact in terms of the corporate tax that they are going to pay. But you also note that there could be some of the intermediate of raw materials which will be imported outside the community, which attract either 10% or 25%. And as we all know, VAT or excise duty, some of them are tax compounding taxes. So indeed, as you are promoting maximum production, firms are going to import raw materials, which they are going to pay tax. And out of that tax, apart from the import duty, you will have an aspect of domestic taxes. So in brief, I would say that the review that we have concluded is expected to have a very positive impact in terms of domestic tax mobilization. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tindamanyire. I want to stay with you for one more question. You have raised issues, and that's why I don't want Simon to put me in the private sector. I know I belong there. But sometimes for us, we set the policies and we can mention some nice things. The process can drag on, and it's okay. We are working on it. But private sector people really want it to click. Now, with all the challenges we've had in the EAC, why should then no one be excited about the bigger thing, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which is even wider, possibly going to face more bigger challenges? Do you want to give any assurances to Simon and any other private sector person out there listening to us? Why should they be excited that that big thing is coming or has come? What are the challenges? What do we need to do better to take advantage and realize those benefits?
Yeah, thank you. As you have rightly said, indeed, a lot of people are excited about the AfCFTA, and just like in any other integration, there are challenges, and we have seen, even with the EAC experience, that at times integration is not performing the way I would expect. We have seen the persistent non-tariff barriers, bad infrastructure, inadequacy or lack of awareness by the players, lack of ownership of the private sector, that is at times partner states negotiate without fully involving the private sector in order to own the process. And as we all know, whatever we are negotiating at the end of the day, it's the private sector who are the key players in terms of, especially like the goods, trading goods, because they are the one who are going to manufacture goods, but whatever the technologies, that their role is just to negotiate on the policy aspects. So why people should be interested is that they gain from the ESP experience. You note that the intertrade has tremendously grown up. So we are expecting that even with the AfCFTA, trade should be high. Of course, there is that fear of loss of revenue, but as it was earlier submitted in the study, you note that most of the EAC are trading with the rest of the world. So that fear should not be that much worrying. But we also note instances where we are going to attract investors, foreign direct investment, but also investors within the African continent. So that's another area that it provides comfort. But also at EAC, we have developed implementation strategy at regional level, but also at partner states level to address capacity gaps. And also we are currently undertaking sensitization and capacity building programs. Even as we speak today, there is a training of trainers undertaken in Mombasa. All is to ensure that the region benefits from the whatever we are anticipating to come out from the AfCFTA. But last and not least is just to submit that private sector played a very key role. They were consulted in the whole process, especially where we were developing EAC common position towards the negotiation. So in brief, I think these are the areas that should provide comfort that the private sector and the EAC as the region will benefit out of the AfCFTA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Donald Tindamanyire. I want to immediately cross over to Simon. And Simon, feel free to conscript us in the private sector, but certainly we might give assurances that you may not be comfortable with, you who holds the steering wheel, much as we might be sharing the car. Private sector sees things differently. We already have COVID-19 and Ukraine disrupting trade in Africa. We already see those kinds of things happening. And we want to really, we're receiving assurances from the EAC that this should work out, the African Continental Free Trade Area. But from where you sit in the private sector, and given the experience of COVID, the experience of the Ukraine-Russian war, things we thought would not disturb us, and we are getting instructions we should not buy Russian oil, even when it's not banned internationally. Where you sit in the private sector, what do you think lies ahead amidst all these challenges for the African Free Continental Trade Area?
Fred, I honestly believe, and most of us do, and by the way, that's the nature of the private sector. That's why we're given this important role to play when it comes to things like East African community integration and bettering, livelihoods. We are always optimistic. and we always know that there is opportunity ahead. Yeah, optimism, opportunity ahead. We actually thrive when there are problems. You know the saying, no pain, no gain. If you go into a business venture and money is coming in very easily, then something's not right. But that's more or less a Ponzi scheme. The more difficult things are, the more you stand to gain. So that means that these uncertainties, and by the way, the East African governments this time did a very, very good job on harmonization, as Moses said over there. They all maintained certain specific bits of the theme that came out very clearly. One of them was security, but another one was uncertainty. And that was a very, very useful approach, because 2 or 3 of the things you've mentioned only happened at the tail end of the budget making process. The Russia-Ukraine war only broke out at the start of this year. But we've been talking about this, doing budget planning for more than 8 months, or had been doing up to that point. The supply chain disruptions caused by China, shutting down provinces one after another, those really came to a fore in December, January. So uncertainty, no stranger to us and our lives. The DRC conflict also has just broken out days after we were celebrating their being admitted into the EAC. But all these things, all these call them headwinds or upheavals, they show us opportunity. When COVID-19 came, there are certain things that we were never thinking about manufacturing in Uganda. Today, we have them on the table. One of them in my business, you all know I bought a Coca-Cola product. One of them is industrial sugar. Within 2 years, we have an industrial sugar factory in Uganda at Kinyara. Great. If it hadn't been for COVID-19, Ugandan sugar would still have been produced brown, raw, and on surplus. It would still be getting exported to countries that would be fine and make more money out of it. Now, Coca-Cola can buy sugar from Masindi. There are many other factories that have come up in this recent period. Why? Because of those uncertainties. Now, with the Africa Free Continental Trade Area, we've been talking about all the great opportunities it presents if things are smooth and hunky-dory. The bigger markets, more people to learn from, more people to buy from and do partnerships with. But if we now begin looking at these uncertainties we mentioned and compare with the opportunity we have as a continent, with this continental free trade area that enables us to, for instance, form joint ventures across 50 countries, where Russia cannot supply, or the Ukraine cannot supply the US or an Asian country, we can take over. And that's the thinking that we need to adopt, develop and adopt and spread across the continent. Now, that thinking, of course, has got to begin here within the individual countries and then go regional. And that's why when we talk about the East African community, it's our first important step as the individual country, because it enables us to scale within our controlled environment here and then grow that advantage of scale to go cross-continent. And once we've done that, then we go for the rest of the globe. Donald there has made very, very good points. And I honestly believe that, yes, the East African community, the political side of this region, and the private sector, we, the business community, we have a great opportunity to put together what we're doing, grow manufacturing, industrialization, because that in turn creates more jobs for people, puts money in the pockets of East Africans. And again, that's something that I really need to applaud the governments for doing. When you read the 3 budget speeches, even before you read the budget itself, the budget is more complicated than the budget speech. There's a focus, a very clear focus on putting more money into the pockets of the people, the East Africans. Why? So that, of course, they can live, and so that we have fewer chances of them, rioting and going haywire, but also so that they can spend, which spending will trigger more production. And in the process, the governments will earn the tax revenue. So the government's made a wide choice in saying we are not going to increase taxes. No, let's spur the economy, enable that engine to run, so that even at the existing tax rates in general, we can collect more. That was the government putting on their business thinking hat. Now we need to think a bit more. and we need to, consult each other as we've been doing in the past, but consult each other with a more forward-looking and wider scope intention. And the Africa Pre-Continental Trade Area enables us to look at that wider scope more realistically. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Simon from Kigali, and keep enjoying the chogam. I will enjoy the hotels they built for this purpose when we come over. Hopefully the rates will be lower. But he's talked and raised quite a number of interesting things. As an economist, I always read The Economist. And one of the interesting things in the recent release of The Economist is as crossing borders becomes difficult, either because of disruptions of COVID, people have continued to centralize, and then the politics and security concerns, countries now want to force private sector to invest where they are friendly countries. So even if you are an investor and your business is in China, but you are biased towards the US will be telling you to relocate. And we have seen lots of companies leaving China for Vietnam. But also what we are also seeing is companies increasing inventories. So rather than trade across the border, they are increasing their own inventories within the country. And Simon has just mentioned industrial sugar, which is right now being manufactured in Kinyara rather than coming from abroad. Now that's a good thing. You are building your resiliency that even if borders are closed, you still have what you need within the country. But that certainly affects Mr. Kaka's business. The borders, when they are on off, the revenue targets may falter. Whichever reason that makes them on off. So talking about the on and off border conflicts between these partner states, how has this destabilized your targets? But also there are issues of the CET, where I would say no more taxation of the trade within. So that border ceases to be there for you to get revenue of a factor that's just across the border. How has this affected your targets and the planning? And whatever challenges you have, I would shift them to your boss who gives you the targets and the policies. Thank you.
Yes, it's true. When there is a conflict or any dispute, it destabilizes the revenue. And we have seen this happening, and when you look at the history, just within the EAC, I think there have been some conflicts or dispute over a few years. When you look at Uganda, DRC, Uganda, Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, the Mijingo, then Uganda, South Africa, Uganda, Tanzania, Mozambique, Tanzania, Malawi, Rwanda, Burundi, Rwanda, DRC, in all these borders. Just to cite one example, in 2018, Uganda exported worth 257 million US dollars of goods to Rwanda. That was in 2018. But immediately the following year, this dropped to 54 million US dollars, which is significant just within a year. And we have also seen this as well this was a case of like when the Uganda, Rwanda, the border being closed, this affected our business and revenue per se. Nevertheless, we are very optimistic that now the borders are open, and we expect that this should normalize. Just looking at the data, the export to Rwanda in the year, looking at March, the month ending, the data shows that Uganda export to Rwanda average at 826 million monthly. We have seen a sharp drop from the 62.6 billion that we are having previously in 2019 per se. So looking at this, though there are opportunities that come up, obviously we're looking at the markets in DRC Congo. We have also seen a sharp increase in exports. But normally what happens is that when there is a conflict or there is a disruption within trade within the cross-border, it affects our economy. But nevertheless, the hope or the beauty we have is that looking at all these things within the EAC, one common thing that we all agree on is that there is political goodwill. For the partner states, we agree that peace, security, and stability is very important for trade to go on and improve livelihood within the EAC citizens. And then the other thing, the aspect is fortunately we also have a framework within the within EAC or the fora where such grievances can be addressed. That's what gives the assurance. But ultimately, all this affects our balance of trade and indeed the revenue collection. That we have seen it happening. Whenever we have a conflict, it affects our revenue collection. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope you can appreciate the challenges they have. Quite often it is easy to say, let's switch off the microphone for the feedback. It's sometimes easy to say you already didn't meet the target, but you can hear the complication that every time you hear bombs instead of sacks of rice and fish crossing the border, that is going to translate into a target. So allow me to invite the two members of the second panel to join this panel. Madam Zerida Zigiti, my friend, where are you? Are you in the house? I was not notified that you'll be online. And then Honorable Afidra Olema Ronald from the EAC Parliamentary Forum on East African Community Affairs. Please join the floor. I still have enough seats. I want to leave with a full board plane, or at least with very few seats, because you all know what no seats mean on the plane. You make losses. So let me fill up my business class wing. At least then I can make losses in the economy class where the rest of you are seated. But I'll be coming to you to listen to your conversations shortly. You'll give me your views and questions. Maybe let me pick two hands from there. Anybody on the floor? Yes, there's one there. And there's two. Please give them the microphones. Let me listen in from the people on the other side of the podium. We have mobile microphones. There are two hands over there. Where is Madame Zigiti? Is she in the house?
Yes. Thank you for moderation. I just have two comments. My name is Julius Mukunda from the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group. And comments are really reserved for my friend Kagwa. There shouldn't be any doubt that we don't support integration. We do. However, my biggest problem is how are we cushioning ourselves from these revenue losses? It came out even yesterday. And my friend Kagwa is, what precautions are we putting in place that we are losing these billions, we shall gain them from here? And afraid this is on the pretext that things will be well. That's number one. The lastly, number two, is with the revenue loss, we are hoping that maybe internally we can generate more resources, but already internally we are giving a lot of exemptions themselves. 7.7 trillion in terms of exemptions. Where are we left to collect money to finance our development? I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Julius Mukunda. The microphone here. Those are questions I had for my friend Kagwa. Thank you very much. I will keep my friendships, and in case he's annoyed with the questions, I will say it is you who asked them. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you. My name is Msoke Thaddeus Nagenda, Chairman Cfta Uganda. Protocol observed. I want to thank the panelists for the presentations and Ciantine for this engagement. Our concern as Cfta, mainly we have had several challenges. When we engage my friend Kagwa and URA, most of the challenges we have found that our local industries have several challenges because the operation costs in Uganda are so high. So you find the products locally produced, the cost is slightly higher than what we import from China. And you find that when we try to engage Minister of Finance to see how can we utilize the integration to make sure that Uganda turns to be the Dubai of Africa, we had several challenges there. So you find that we thought when Congo comes on, we are going to make more profits. But you find that again, even the chains of trade at times have challenges. You find the manufacturer wants even to take the product to the last consumer. So somewhere being eliminated from the chain of trade. And then secondly, we thought that since even they have challenges with capacity, our industries have challenges of capacity, even they cannot meet the local market. So you find that we are trying to substitute the demand with importation. So we are worried when we want to fully utilize the integrated market, then it means that they will have to increase the cost of their products. I mean the price of their products, because they are so much on demand. So we have also their question marks. Now currently, we are trying to see that how can we try to promote diversification in traders? Because most of the time President was saying that we don't want to do bobo, we don't want to add value. But just imagine in Uganda, just connecting electricity, you need 750. Just now, if you want to set up a cottage industry, it's a very big challenge. Plus bribing. You know, if you don't bribe, it can take years.
I was wondering why you had left that. Because
To get connected.
750 is minus that other component.
So that's like 1 million. Then in case you need a pole, those are 2 millions. Now plus a bribe, like 3 millions. So you find that we need to see that how can we reduce the cost of doing business. Lastly, we have been engaging Ministry of Finance about high transport costs. I'm happy through the engagement, the Ministry of Finance decided stakeholders to be consulted during the budget process, where we submitted our presentations, and we are lucky that they allocated a better percentage to improve infrastructure, because you are competing with Kenyan industries who have cheaper transport costs of their inputs, and now transporting raw material from the Mombasa to Uganda is so costly. So we thought that if they invest in the lorry, it's the cheapest means of transport. You never know, somewhere it can favor our comrades through the Uganda Manufacturers Association, and we were trying to start also value addition. Thank you. I submit.
Thank you very much. Cfta is no longer necessarily Kampala City Traders Association. It's Cfta Uganda. So they upgraded and picked up all the other traders. But also that's what you do when you want to survive in the market. Otherwise, Guru Traders Association was going to come up. Because now we have many cities, there are 7. So you try and ring fence the space before the others become cities. So we can only have one. Honorable Ronald, I want to come to you. And we are speaking to really, I have no more questions for my friend Kagwa. Rather enough have been packed to him, which I even had here. But I'll bring him in at the end, because sometimes you want to finance investment, infrastructure, as he talked about. Some of these monies are going to be loans. And in the event URA doesn't find the money, we cannot stop the infrastructure, he has to borrow. So really, it's becoming very, very tricky. Financing the development we need to do, the revenues are falling, the debt is rising, the question that Julius has raised. And I'm not seeing my friend Zerida Zigiti, who is the acting commissioner, data and policy, whether she's supposed to be online. But if I do not catch her, the director is here, he will answer those spaces. But let me first go to Honorable and ask, in these perspectives, how can countries equitably finance the development of infrastructure? How do we manage debt and some of these issues? Sometimes it's a political space. You politicians just tell us do this. Please speak to that and the theme.
Thank you, Dr. Muhumuza. Sometimes having you as a moderator is quite challenging, because
because the questions you raise to some of us may be very challenging to answer. But by and large, I want to thank you for inviting me, the organizers, for this important dialogue workshop. I sit under the Parliamentary Forum for East African Commission Affairs. And as a first legislator in the 11th Parliament, and after having worked within the region, I found that parliamentary affairs relevant affairs for me to have an influence in. And this sitting is in line to what I've learned within the region. Listening carefully for the roles of parliament or a member of parliament, and all this that we've been talking about comes to our dock, where the people who make the policies and the laws and legislations in these countries, whether it is East African Commission, Parliament, or whether it is any of the member states' parliament, all our role is paramount around legislation. And we made it an important issue that because the countries are faced with the issues of the pandemic, as a Ugandan parliamentary, we decided that, one, we should recover from our economy, and the executive took it up. And that's why, as a country, we don't have any other taxes levied on. We agreed as parliament. And I think as a Ugandan parliament, you need to credit us that we too are feeling the shock. And that's why Minister of Finance said, no, taxes, we agreed. The second issue of responding to how best we can finance our budget and our development infrastructure within is Ugandan parliament is a little bit unique. We have development infrastructure financed by the taxes collected by Uganda Revenue Authority. During the budget speech, you heard it rightly from His Excellency, that part of our development has been over time, last 5 years or 10, is being financed by us. And that's where the country, and that's where as members of parliament, we want to realign our legislation and our policies so that if the taxes are collected effectively, and this should be seen in the people that our taxes are working for us. The third issue is we came up with proposals of how effective, now that we are not increasing taxes, how effective should the taxes that are already there be collected? And we heard about the minister talking about the 5 different tax bills that were really ascended to by the president, was it this month? Oh, yeah, this month. We know we have a lot of money in this country, but we're not paying our taxes as effectively as Ugandans. The other issue is that I don't know whether the laws are made for a few Ugandans. A few Ugandans pay taxes and some don't pay. And we're like, what is happening in the tax collection? You mentioned about the exemptions given still by the government. We have a lot of exemptions indeed given. If these exemptions were not to be given, and these would be turned as revenues for our country and would be channeled for development. And as Parliament, we do hope that the new amendments we passed as tax amendments would enhance our tax or revenue collection to facilitate our development infrastructures via payment for it. The second issue is, the third issue is, as Parliament, we approve loans. And Ugandan Parliament, I may speak to, we have 25 trillion to be collected by Uganda Revenue Authority. But we have about 6.2 something trillion as loans that we are looking forward to finance our development infrastructure. Now, as Parliament, we want to see where effectively shall these loans be utilized. The country has been getting a lot of loans, and some of the loans have never been utilized. If we're financing the roads have never taken off But as a country, we are paying the interest on these loans. Now, as the 11th Parliament, we want to see effective use of the different loans that we shall be getting as a country to finance our development infrastructure. The third issue, or the fifth issue, you may say, is that we want to appeal to our government. Government borrowed money from us, domestic borrowing. And this has construed our people to productively engage in productive agriculture or productive industrialization in this country. Our appeal is, can government release people's money, especially the domestic money that they borrowed, so that this money can be invested for productive sectors that we have in this country? The last one I would say is, if you look at the theme of our budget this year, and I'm glad that East African Community harmonized it, and that is the trend we're looking forward into, accelerating economic recovery and enhancing productive sectors for improved livelihood. Uganda's economy is driven by agriculture. And as a country, we have come up with a number of industrial parks. Some are mostly likely going to be for agro-industrialization. Now, how much of this money is going to be engaged in agro-industrialization? That we've budgeted for. 2, how much of this money and at what cost? The private sector, Cfta, has raised asked a question. The cost of borrowing this money for the private sector, in my view, in this country, is so exorbitant. We cannot afford, as a country, to borrow money for agricultural financing, for agro-industrialization. Now, if we're in agricultural economy, economy being driven by agriculture, the banks cannot sustainably lend to the agricultural sector productively, leave alone the interest rates, 23%, 19%. As a policymaker, we need to be convinced and we need to pass legislation if you want to finance development. This is my view. We must rein over our central bank to bring down the lending rates. Assuming if the lending rates in this country are below 3%, then that means any private sector engaged in agriculture can be able to maybe borrow from the commercial banks at 5%. And will be able to invest this money in productive agriculture. Towards the end, we create more employment for the people. And talking about the free trade zone within, the gaps that exist, the potential that exists for food to move within Uganda, within EAC, within Africa, and the value addition, we can be able to enhance our productivity and pay more taxes and remit. The tax default rates will be quite low as a country, and therefore we can be able to thrive so much in this economy of this country. That said, if the lending rates become low, default rates would be far much less. I like the idea of the East African Community creating the one currency. And we know we borrow from everywhere. I know we are time bad. I want to end with this comment on especially the cost of borrowing. How many more of the African countries borrow from within other than borrowing from IMF, World Bank, from those who are controlling us? Because those who are borrowing to us do not want us to develop. This is my view. If the more we borrow from within for development, the more we borrow from within for agricultural investment, the more we borrow from within, we can be, in near future become self-sustained, and our policies will reflect what we are. Mzee Julius Nyerere made a statement. Let me end with that. He talked about globalization. We're talking about East African Community. All the 5 member states or the 7 member states now in East Africa, we are all different economically. That's why in the presentation of CR10, 40% or 42% of Uganda's taxes or money comes through customs, and 58 is through domestic revenue. But when you get to Kenya, it is the reverse. So if all of us are different, and more so within Uganda, we need to put ourselves in the African Free Trade Zone with where we can be able to match. So Julius Nyerere said, in a boxing ring, you put the lightweight with the lightweight. In East Africa, we are fairly the same. But globally, we cannot be able to compete effectively so that we can be able to finance our development infrastructure. We don't have the resources. But we have the abilities to convert this paradigm shift. All the raw materials in the world are within Africa. We have the potential much more than any other. And I would like to urge us, as Parliament, we'll be able to pass policies to convert our raw materials into the final products. I know the coffee deal is an issue we have in this country, but those are the thoughts that we want. Can we make value and expect final products that can fetch more for us so that we can finance our budgets, our development infrastructure, other than exporting raw materials that we rely on loans from external financing? I submit.
Thank you very much. A lot of meat to chew over on issues from the legislation's perspective, the legislator's perspective, and they are quite fundamental in these decision processes. As we borrow domestically, we are sometimes accusing Kagwa here that banks cannot lower the rate below 3% when government itself has said, I'm ready to borrow at 14%. So sometimes it's a conversation we want the three arms of government to have a conversation on before they even come to tell us what has happened there. Because the private sector is waiting for that conversation. Because government will say, I want to borrow domestically and they are going to borrow at 14%. You will approve it in Parliament. Cfta here will begin to face the brunt of that decision. But you have also talked about international fellows, and I have somebody who is based at the International Center for Tax and Development. Adrian Lee, I'm told you are online. You want to have your time now to give your submission. Thereafter, I will come to Mr. Kagwa to give me his views and closing remarks. Adrian Lee, you have the floor.
Hello. Thank you for having me at your dialogue. It's been really interesting to listen to the views and opinions shared by the panelists so far, and see some familiar names in the audience. So I was asked to speak about two issues broadly. The one is, how is Uganda and the EAC more widely able to use tax policy and fiscal policy to respond to increasing global pressures, and the EAC in the rest of the world are not immune to the inflationary pressures, supply chain issues, rising oil prices. You know, many countries are facing the same kinds of problems that the EAC faces. So how can tax policy be used to respond to that? And the second issue is, I was quite involved in the drafting of the DRMS in 2017 to 2019. And the Cfta panelists, organizers asked me to speak about how the DRMS propels Uganda towards the ambition of tax harmonization within the EAC. So starting with the first, I think broadly there's two prongs to this answer. Increasing taxation is obviously easier when it's broadly supported by a economic development and that addresses a tax policy that addresses societal issues. So how does that look in a country like Uganda? In my mind, the focus should be on increasing the equity of the tax system. That speaks to both domestic and international tax loopholes. For instance, I was quite passionate while I was in Uganda about taxing high net worth individuals and wealthy corporations. This is not just an international tax issue, but also an issue in the domestic tax policy. For instance, property taxes, I think, in Uganda are underutilized and can quickly be scaled up without much of an adverse effect on incentives to invest and to innovate. They're also economically efficient taxes that can be quite tangibly linked to service provision. And so it's an area worth exploring more seriously. There are also many opaque tax incentives for investors that are more motivated by politics, I think, than by economic strategy. And this, over time, eats away at your potential revenue base. And there's more, I think there's more scope to increase the transparency around these tax exemptions. This is also then speaks to the second part of the question, which is on EAC harmonization. One area where intergovernment cooperation could be more effective within the region is on tax exemptions. I think in the past, the approach has been quite sort of beggar thy neighbor, and investors have been able to pit regional players and neighbors against each other, placing more pressure to offer bigger and better incentives over time to attract investment. But in the long run, this just drives down the effective tax rates that you're able to have anywhere. And so over time, you just erode your own tax base, introduce more and more loopholes for investors to exploit, and as a result, lower your tax collection overall. So I think, you know, the EAC now, with the expanded membership and a strong economic position, have the potential to push back and collaborate more effectively on an approach that's agreed between the countries, so that you're not sort of drawing down each other's revenue potential over time. In terms of taxing the wealthy, I think we need to look more carefully at the non-wage income of relatively high net worth individuals in Uganda. This sort of reflects a weakness in both administration, tax enforcement, and the tax policy. But what is happening, I think, in the personal income tax system is that a relatively small share of the population of formal sector wage earning employees bear a high tax burden. I'm talking here about teachers, nurses, public sector employees, those who are subject to PAYE and have their tax automatically deducted. And the tax rates in Uganda come in at a fairly low level and escalate fairly quickly. So what ends up happening is that your teachers and nurses bear a heavy tax burden, whereas those who are earning non-wage income or sort of self-employed individuals are able to more cleverly engage in tax evasion, as they're not having income tax deducted at source. So I think this calls for sort of 3 or 4 areas. One is more effective enforcement of taxation on relatively wealthy individuals. The second kind of area would be the better enforcement of taxes on capital wealth. And the third area would be to relook at the progressivity of the income tax schedule, especially where they're coming in at a very low level, and reassess whether this is truly a sort of equitable approach. On this, Uganda, I think, can also take inspiration from countries that are looking to tax wealthy individuals, or at least detect tax evasion by wealthy individuals through kind of lifestyle audits. They look at those who are buying luxury cars, who travel very frequently, who have big share portfolios, import and export extensively, taking out large loans, and see whether those individuals are potentially evading taxes that they're due. Uganda, I think, can also make better use of international exchange of information regulations and laws to find out more about who owns foreign bank accounts amongst their taxpayers, and look at the offshore wealth of certain taxpayers. This doesn't require new taxes, and I think there's a tendency to always want to introduce a new tax head, or at least to sort of tweak tax heads to add more and more layers to them, add more and more complexity. I don't think that's necessary. I think what we need here is proper enforcement of the existing laws and adjustments that reduce administrative and political complexity, but ultimately render the taxes more enforceable. Overall, these kinds of measures will, I think, support the building of public trust, especially if the government can publicize that they are following a rules-based equitable taxation program, and that they are targeting those in Uganda who have benefited from, well, in the past have benefited from sort of weak enforcement, and now that we're coming to knock on your doors and see, can you contribute more to the development of the country? This would show that the government is more committed to fair taxation and be able to channel revenue. And if the government is able to then channel revenues to projects that are for general public benefit, that supports public confidence in taxation and might then enable a broader acceptance and public trust in taxation, and a willingness to pay that I think can be quite low in Uganda, especially amongst those who feel that the tax burden weighs very heavily on them. Okay, I think, Fred, I can maybe conclude my remarks there and see if there's any questions that you'd like me to answer before I jump off, because I'll have to leave fairly shortly.
Thank you very much, Adrian Lee. We will have to send the questions to you online in case there are any that they want you to answer, because it's not only you who wants to jump off. I also want to jump off the NTV live show. So I have to lose off part of my audience, but cyberspace is where me and Adrian Lee and the rest of the conversation is going to continue. So if there are any questions, we'll be able to liaise with you online. But for those viewing us from NTV in the comfort of your, wherever you are, as we have already said today, it is to be in the comfort of your sitting room, but now it can be in the comfort of your car, it can be in the comfort of the tree where you are, or in the garden where you're looking for cassava to eat or to sell. We will soon be signing off from that medium, but we will remain engaged on all the other platforms and media of engagements. Let me get to the audience. So please, if you've been watching us from the NTV, we want to hand you back to the studio for formalities on that side. And we'll be with you certainly later on in our news broadcast. We want to appreciate NTV for this provision, and want to appreciate all the partners, Siatini, Uganda Revenue Authority, the ECONI. I've seen quite a number of them, the Ministry of Finance, who have made this possible. On behalf of the organizers and on behalf of myself, I want to appreciate everybody. And you, our viewers out there, who are picking up these issues. The financial year is yet to begin, but we are preparing if it happens, what is going to happen, and we have all seen what we need to be doing. I wish it was a post-tax dialogue, but taxes are never post. They will always be there. It can be a post-budget, but certainly not post-tax. So for viewers out there on NTV, we want to say kwaheri. Have a good time with yourselves. Don't forget to eat cassava for lunch, or at least for dinner. It's a nice crop, it's nice food. We grew up where I come from, you can eat it. And in Uganda, they say cassava is really the crop for the African. The leaves can be made for sauce. The stem can work as firewood. The roots can be eaten for food. So if you want a real package, self-contained room in Serena, cassava is the thing to do. Lawrence Kagwa, I think you had the conversation. Is there anybody in the audience with a question or two before I get back to the formalities of completion? I see men's hands. What happened to ladies' hands from the floor? I'm really constrained. I'll pick number one. I'll have number two. And then unless there is a lady, I'll close the floor as engagements, and then we'll get back to the panel for the closers of the day.
Thank you. David,
That was a security question. It will be answered. You have the floor, sir.
very much. Thank you very much.
Just proceed. This microphone seems to
Hello?
have a problem.
Hello? Maybe it's not on now. Yeah, thank you very much, Fred Mpumuza, for the moderation. And thank you to the panelists. My name is Jemba Kanakuya Mrondo from Kasita, Uganda. Just allow me to quote from the PS, Mr. Govi, that was on 26th March 2018. Mr. Govi, Ramadan had this to write, that government increased borrowing will in the future mean increased tax to an already constrained group of taxpayers, which will eventually lead to shrinking of the economy. Are we seeing anything different right now as we talk? Or we are really seeing what the prophecy from Mr. Govi? Then I'd like to have this to Mr. Kagwa about the base and rates where the disparities are on VAT in the region. What can be its impact on the ordinary, especially ordinary Ugandans or ordinary men and women in the EAC? And we're seeing some of the reasons being the rising commodity prices without consideration of the logistical issues internationally. Don't you think partly this is one of the reasons why we are having this? Then I had my friend Kahelu from Rwanda. We agree really the importance of increased productivity and industrialization is a key to development of not only this economy, but EAC and Africa at large. And intra-trading at AFTA is one of the key components that can really lead this country to higher economic development. However, we are not going into that to trade within locally. We are going into industrialization and increased productivity to benefit from different levels internationally as well. But if we are going to increase taxes domestically in order to absorb the shocks of failure to raise targets by customs, especially as we focus towards African Continental Free Trade Area, where certain taxes might be eroded. How are we going to survive since we are going to be trading with other countries? Don't you think reciprocity might happen at a certain point, leading Ugandan goods to be more competitive in the region or on the African continent if we don't double check our tax system and regime as a country? Lastly, how much have we done locally to interest local investors to join local investment? We have a number of them owning so many arcades in the country and other estate investment, which can easily, if they were advised and given guidance from the Ministry of Finance, whereby we would like to see you on a round table with local businessmen and women, showing them opportunities, guiding them where to invest after our Ministry of Trade and the government in general looking for markets for different products where we have the strength, especially in agriculture
tourism and other areas. Don't you think enticing them and interesting them into investing locally instead of going into real estate only can really do much to uplift this economy? Thank you very much. I submit.
Thank you very much. Since I've not seen ladies on that side, I will get back to Mr. Kagwa. I think I have no further instructions to you. I saw you writing a lot of instructions from our audience, both online and physical. There also have been some instructions from your own PSST, which have been reiterated. I don't know whether the instructions or messages to carry, but you have the floor. You've been seasoned in this space. You know what to do with them.
Thank you so much, Fred. And thank you all for your wonderful questions. There are no stupid questions, there are only stupid answers. So, one, I want to recognize one of my own, my MP, Laura Kanushu. You're most welcome. I don't know where to start from because the questions are really many and they are hot, but I'll start from a quotation which was made in July of 1973 by a gentleman called Russell J. Long. This was a legislator from Louisiana, and he said, "Don't tax me. Don't tax him. Don't tax her. Tax that fella behind the tree." I think I'll leave it at that because we talk about taxation, but nobody wants to be taxed. And one time, I remember people were talking about exemptions. In 2014, we tried to remove a number of exemptions. And surprisingly, everyone was up in arms that we are going to tax agriculture. How can you tax agriculture? How can you tax horse? How can you tax tractors? How can you tax all this? So it was up in arms, and EPRC even undertook a study against our advice, showing that the economy was going to shrink by 7 trillion shillings because we are removing exemptions. So these issues of exemptions, we can talk about them, but they are not very easy to unlock because there are many, many interests. MPs themselves don't want to be taxed. You can't hear that. The army is not taxed. You can't hear that. DPP recently wrote and said, my state attorneys should not be taxed. So this is the environment that we are operating in. And investors come here and they say, if you are to impose a tax on us, we are not going to come into this country. On it, technically, we see some of these things are not justified. But there is the political economy to consider. So what we are doing, we are not sitting because we know that. What we have decided to do is to do what we call a tax expenditure framework. This is a framework which will put down all the exemptions in this country, the incentives we have given, and try to compare them with the benefits that we are getting out of that. Are we really getting value for these benefits? Are we seeing employment? Are we seeing value addition on our products? Are we seeing exports increasing? So we'll put them, we'll judge them against that and put them forth and say, yes, these are the recommendations we are going to make out of that. So I would say, yes, exemptions are really a problem, but the way we've handled them is that we are going to do a tax expenditure framework. I've had a lot of concern about the African Continental Free Trade Area and what that will mean to our revenue. I got a figure, $13.5 million, $13.5 million. which is about 51.5 billion. Really, should we be scratching our heads that we are going to have a loss of revenue of 51 billion, and as a result, we shouldn't be talking about the African Continental Free Trade Area? That's very little money, according to me. We are collecting we are going to collect 25 trillion next year. So if we take off 51 billion, should we really be here debating that? Shouldn't we be talking about areas where we are not taxing? Adrian, who was on the other side, talked about the high net worth individuals. Shouldn't we be talking about going after those guys who have so much money that they are not paying us? Shouldn't we be talking about people in the transport sector who are making money, but we don't see it, at least in our revenues? Shouldn't we really be talking about widening the tax base domestically? And that's what we did this year. We said we are not going to increase taxes. We are going to rely on URA to come out and fish out those taxpayers who are not paying. We are going to see guys who are underpaying. Because we can say we want so many people to come on board. Yes, but they could be giving us paltry terms. But we think there's some people who are big, but they're not actually paying their fair of taxes. So we are empowering URA. 600 new staff have been put in to really run around because they didn't have enough staff. We are investing in ICT and IT. We think that will help them to be able to do that. We are making sure that they sharpen their analytics and be able to find out the taxpayers who are actually not paying. But I think this is also the time now I'm appealing to people out there. Please pay your taxes. Because if URA comes to you, they will fine you. We have increased fines starting next year. We are increasing fines. They are very stiff. So why should you want to be fined? We have seen a lot of people coming to the Ministry of Finance, sometimes crying that URA has closed my business. I was reading in Mulengera, I think, where they said URA has killed Samona. That, you know, the way they have been taxing. But let's pay our taxes, and URA will not come and kill your business. But if you have a liability of 100 billion, really, can you manage? So really, I'm appealing to the Ugandans to make sure that you are compliant. Mr. Jemba, yes, you talked about increased borrowing, what PS said. At least he was cautioning, I think it was cautioning, that if you borrow a lot, ultimately, you'll have to pay back. And how do you pay back? You'll have to look for a source. And the sure source where you will not pay back is taxes. And you will have to increase taxes. So it was a caution that let's not be demanding for so many things. Let's spend more, Because if you want to spend and you don't have, you'll have to borrow. And if you have to borrow, that means that taxes at some point will have to be increased. But he wasn't saying he's going to increase taxes. So I think that's how at least I understood him, and that's what he's always saying. On supporting or on calling in the business people to come, you're saying how much can we interest them? We have tried. But I want to tell you that there are opportunities. And some of the private sector, they have slowly come. I've seen now 3 Ugandans putting up 5-star hotels in this country, which wasn't before. They were in trading, they had supermarkets, they were in other things, but they are moved away from that and say, hey, there is something else we can do. Maybe from putting up hotels, we shall move into other areas. We have also seen Ugandans putting up, businessmen, they have put up industrial factories. There's a pharmaceutical plant which is being put up by Ugandan because they have listened. It's called Kemsby. It's going to be launched very soon. And I was telling this gentleman that, yes, really, let's advertise this so that people can know that Ugandans are there. You've heard of the gloves making factory by Uganda. There are so many people who are going into furniture. So we are going to import less furniture, or actually not import at all. So the opportunities are there, and we are moving to the private sector. But specifically Cfta, you one time went to the president and he told you stop trading, come and get into manufacturing. And you said you didn't know the opportunities that were there. UIA was directed to show you these opportunities, and UIA did. But a lot of people, I think, were not interested. So we'll go ahead. We'll go to the traders again. We have no problem with that, and try to tell them the opportunities. There are so many opportunities here that they can take advantage of. I think I've tried to answer maybe
one more.
Mr. Nagenda's questions on operational costs of our goods are so high. Yes, we are trying as a country. Of course, we know the cost of transport from Mombasa to Kampala is very, very high. We know the cost of electricity is still high. We know our labor is a bit inefficient, but we are working on that. As you've seen, we are rehabilitating the meter gauge railway. We are working with the Kenyans so that when the goods come on the standard gauge railway from Kenya, at least when they reach Malaba, we can offload them and put them on our meter gauge railway, and they come. That will reduce. We are also eyeing the southern route from Dar es Salaam. If the goods reach Mwanza by railway, then we can get them by water to Bokassa or Port Bell, and Port Bell is only 13 kilometers. So if you do standard gauge for 13 kilometers, that would help. So we are looking at all these issues, and I think going forward, that's why we have talked about quality infrastructure. Going forward, that's what we are looking at. And when you want to be a Dubai of Africa, and you're talking about East Africa community increasing, then you think, which Africa are you talking about? Because when you start integrating, you are removing these borders, literally, and you become one country. So you cannot bring garments from China and put them here in a warehouse and sell them to DR Congo without paying taxes, or South Sudan. That will be contrary to the East African Customs Union Protocol. So the same is going to happen to the African Continental Free Trade Area. You will not be allowed to have goods, finished goods from all those countries, and then you are selling them, distributing them in the EAC. So let's look at these rules and understand them properly. And then that would help us in the way we are going to deal with business. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Moses Kagwa, Acting Director, Economic Affairs, for even highlighting what is coming ahead. In the data, I see a lot of re-exports for Uganda. The people who bring even finished goods, by the way, they have a definition. So don't just say, when I brought my sugar and then repackaged it, it's Ugandan sugar. Even if you have labeled it Uganda, you realize it will be taxed as you try to get it out there. So even as we say no new taxes, maybe there are certain taxes that will not be new, old, but you will face them as new. And these are things to really think about. But also the global economy is changing. We are seeing some big companies in this town are going to lay off employees because they have adopted technology. So we need to be thinking of how do we tax technology where there are no employees, because pay as you earn will begin to disappear since we don't tax ATMs and apps. But they are doing exactly what people are doing. Rental income may go down because apps don't sleep in houses, but they are making business. We also have to rethink through our strategies. The young people are going out. Do we therefore begin to talk about tax to GDP ratio or tax to GNP? because some Ugandans earning money are out there. And there is a survey I would encourage you to go and read on the BBC, where they interviewed a number of young people aged between 18 and 24 in Africa, including Uganda, and many of them, a good percentage of them wanted to leave their countries and go and work abroad. These are Ugandans. Can we tax them in Canada and China and Dubai, where they are going to be working? How do we work out in those arrangements? Because that earning, we may possibly need it. And their reasons are really there. They are looking for jobs. Some are looking for educational opportunities. But surprisingly, some of them are saying they are beginning to feel insecure in these countries. Physical insecurity, human trafficking, iron buffaloes. And so they ask them questions. I will encourage you to go to the BBC website and read. They will ask whether their countries are headed in the right direction. 60% in Rwanda said yes. 56% in Ghana said yes. Now, surprisingly, next in line is Uganda. Only 38% said yes. Now, whether you believe them or not, that is their plan in the next 1 year or two, given an opportunity they want to go. Revenue, are we going to tax the people as they cross the border and go, or we wait for them to reach the other side and we tax? Your parting shot, from Revenue Authority. Yeah, give us your parting shot as we wind up.
Yes. Yeah, we've had a conversation, and really, when you look at the future, customs will be doing more for trade facilitation, and we should be able to mobilize the revenue domestically. That's the future for us. However, so it means the custom or international trade taxes, the custom department will be focusing on trade facilitation. And there are a number of initiatives you find that they are now to facilitate trade. We have invested a lot in tax education, taxpayer engagement, and sensitization. That will be our focus. We are looking at the efficiency measures. We also far enrolled over 21 players on the electronic single window. So we are bringing everyone on the platform, the one-stop border post, the single custom territory, then the staff efficiency in terms of the service level agreement, capacity building, and facilitation. There are so many initiatives that URA has come up with to see that we are able to mobilize this revenue, and we are confident that we would be able to mobilize this revenue, and we are looking forward for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Your parting shot for today.
Thank you so much. I had a comment from the public, and I want to put it across to the organizers that we need to engage everybody, including the politicians. We make the policies and the laws. All what is from here beyond affecting all of us. We are your representatives. That makes the laws in this parliament, either the parliament of Kenya, whichever parliament in the 7 countries. We need private sector politician engagement in utilization and uptake so that we can be able to contribute to the taxes in this country. Engage us, we have a say in it. That said, my belief is for this country to continuously develop, the parliament shall be engaged in more approval of loans while provided for infrastructural development, because I see here the railway is a problem. And Minister of Finance or Executive will bring to us. We want to have this railway line improved. There's a 2.3 or $23 billion EXIM Chinese grant, Chinese loan to upgrade our railways. That can reduce on our transportation cost. So if as Parliament, we continuously engage in this approval of loans for development, whether both domestic or external, productivity will increase. And I do hope that our tax base will increase or improve in future, whether it in airlines or whether it in roads, whether it in railways or whichever area, we'll play our role. And then that does not stop us from even playing our role as an oversight of these different approvals that we'll make. The last one, my comment, is on the issue on power. We are committed. It is so absurd as a country. The water that generates electricity is Ugandan water. And the power from the production is about 200 shillings. But this power from where it is being produced to be consumed by the industrialist or us, we pay about 700 or 800. There's that gap which goes to some private sector, whether Umeme or whether who. This is, to me, robbery. This is, to me, robbery. And I do believe the current parliamentarians are looking into this. If the tariffs are reduced, the private sector can thrive in productivity and agro-industrialization in the different industrial zones that we have in this country. We will create more employment for our people. We'll pay more taxes. So we'll keep playing our role as legislators and having oversight for another proposal that is in the interest of the people of this country that comes from executive, whether it be in law or legislation, will stand with the people who send us in this parliament so that our country develops. I submit.
Thank you very much. That's a commitment from the Parliament that you just raise the issues and send them there. Reflect the people. Don't reflect yourselves. You are a person, carry along people with you. These matters will be considered. I have two people online and I want to pick up their closing remarks out there. Mr. Donald Tindamanyiri, are you online? Are you on Shady? Are you able to hear us? Would like to hear you and get your closing remarks for this session.
Yeah, thank you, moderator. Yeah, as we are about to close, I think indeed, first of all, we wish to thank the organizers for inviting EAC and being part of this dialogue. But as we are all aware, I think it's a high time now as East Africans and private sector to ensure that advantage of the agreements that our partner states have entered. That is AfCFTA, but we should also not forget the tripartite. And from what we are seeing, I think as the REX, a lot has been done in terms of facilitating trade. We can see partners when they join efforts. We have a lot of initiatives aimed at facilitating trade. Just in customs, we are implementing the single custom territory initiative, the one-stop border post, but we are also seeing customs have been able to interconnect their system for seamless flow of information. In any integration, we also have some challenges, but we're happy to see that, as it was earlier mentioned by the chief guest, that partner states are working hard towards elimination of non-tariff barriers so as to see that the integration that we are in comes to reality. We need to see the free movement of goods, free movement of person, and that is when we can say EAC has successfully made its integration agenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Donald. I have one more of the panelists out there. His name speaks to where he is. If you know what Kaheru means, he's a hair there. Simon, what do you have to say to tell us from Aheru where you are?
Thank you, Fred, fellow panelists, and again, Siatini. Very informative and deep discussions here. Where I am at this business forum, we're more or less having the same conversations. And again, the focus is mostly taking what we have out into Africa. And the challenge that I want to present, many people asking Moses Kagwa there about what the government is going to do, can do better. But the two challenges are for us as the players, the private sector, to do a lot more to not just hold the government accountable, but get the plans that they've got and convert them into the actual opportunity that we keep on talking about. And then two, to ensure that we are all investing more in people and maintaining the focus on putting money in the pockets of the people so that business, industry, and trade are incentivized and enabled to grow. And I'll give you again another example from my own organization because Kasita said it very well and Moses has responded. I bottle sodas and water. And as a factory, we employ only 1,000 people. Yes, those are good employment numbers, but you need to always remember why we focus on manufacturing and factories. Those 1,000 people earn money and go and spend it. But even more importantly, those factories are taking in raw materials from even the farmers. And you know, for instance, I do bushera in Uganda. And then we sell these products into an economy that, you know, consists of 100,000 retail outlets. Those are 100,000 businesses that also employ other people. That is how the economy keeps on expanding. Money gets spread out there, and the government sits back and taxes us. The solutions, of course, that the government uses, we need to keep questioning, advising, and improving upon. But if we do it right within Uganda, then we can do it right across East Africa and out into the rest of Africa. And the scenario that my brother from Kasita raised of goods and products being cheaper when they're imported from, let's say, China, will be reversed. But first, we have to do it right here, within the room, within our own house. Thank you very much, and I look forward to us getting it right.
Thank you very much, Simon. I made sure my water is in a glass because I know Simon bottles water. I don't know which one he bottles. So he doesn't know which water I'm drinking. We will keep our friendships when he comes back. But he mentioned quite a number of interesting things for this conversation. You may target to have large taxpayers, but they do a ripple effect on many other smaller businesses who can, if their businesses go up, they reach the taxable category. We have a tax register now of 2.4 million people, but real our taxes are coming from around 1,000 entities. So as more people graduate into higher levels of incomes, cutters of leveraging, the big businesses, we will begin to collect more of these taxes now that the taxes across the border are certainly going to disappear. So those linkages need to come through. It's talked of those 100,000 retailers who take their products to the final consumer. I know we have about 22,000 bank agents since agent banking came in. About 18,000 are active. So these are the linkages within the economy that we would want to see and have come up more. And this is where I think Nyerere's conversation comes back. We can no longer have space where you will put the lightweight alone and the heavyweight alone. This is not a jungle law. The antelope must raise its young ones where the hyenas and cheetahs and leopards live. You've seen the Mara crossing where the crocodiles are really waiting for the beasts to come and they eat them. So how do we survive in that kind of jungle law? Because the oil prices that are hitting us right now, we have no say about them. Even wheat, we have no say. Cooking oil, we have no say. How do we realign ourselves? It's a good conversation really to have, to say the safety is, how do you build your own internal resilience? I want to invite Siatini to take us to the next level of inviting, unless you are not there and I will take the honors, but I did not open this meeting. I'm fearing to invite somebody to close it. I might breach the protocols. Is anybody willing to come and invite the closing, the person to give us the closing remarks? And give us some administrative issues, but in case they have gone away and they have closed us in here, we'll open for ourselves. I just wanted her to give me my marching orders, but I'll come back and replace her after she has done her duties and the closing remarks have been given.
I think I'm the acting ED now. Okay. Do you want me to invite closing or even the administrative remarks? Just to confirm. Oh, okay. For me, it's thank to the moderator. Please put your hands together for. We had 2 moderators. I hope you noticed. To thank the panelists, all protocol observed. Please put your hands together. Today I was in the DRM meeting. I know Mr. Kagwa knows about it. I was also participating. They're also calling Mr. Kagwa to participate in the same engagement. So I was thinking, but I need Mr. Kagwa in my meeting, you know? So you can see, we don't take your participation for granted, as well as other participants. I do thank the subcommittee organizers of this meeting. We do have URA, Minister of Finance, Siatini, Miaka, Piaka, Iala, and the EAC Secretariat. Thank you very much. The National Budget Month partners, including CSBAG, thank you. Tax Excellency members, thank you for being part of this engagement. And all the participants, including the honorables present. Thank you very much. We had both online and the physical participation, but also we thank our partners, those who supported this engagement, Oxfam and Diaconia. We thank the media fraternity, and we commit that this conversation is going to continue both here and after. The National Budget Month engagements are still on, and we commit that the National Budget Month partners will continue engaging the public, both at national and subnational level. I know next week we shall be going out to the different regions in the country. I believe that we've all learned a lot. We are learning. It's an opportunity for us to continue learning. And at this juncture, I would like to invite Honorable Odong to come and give his last remarks, representing the EALA speaker. Thank you.
And as he comes, the panelists can resume their seats.
The guest of honor, in her absentia, the Right Honorable Rebecca Litwala Kadaga, the members of parliament who are here, the technical staff and the panelists, all of you distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. First, I want to thank Siatini and all the other dialogue partners for inviting EALA to be part of this conversation, but also to be consistent with the kind of engagement that we have had ever since we started to engage with the Siatini. We thank you so much for taking up that leadership role. Mine is just to make closing remarks. I don't have a written speech, but I have taken note of the issues that have emerged from this very, very useful and insightful conversation that has taken place this morning up to this afternoon. And I think that with this kind of dialogue, we are in the right path. And I want to thank Siatini and the other dialogue partners for, bringing together these participants who have brought in a wealth of experience and research and enhanced our understanding of our tax landscape and how it impacts on our development as a region and as a country. So I thank you so much. There are things that have emerged during this conversation that are very, very important for us. First, the importance of regional integration. And I want to thank the Council of Ministers that came together and agreed on a common theme that informed the budgets of our EAC partner states. This is the direction that we have been asking for, so that we, we work in tandem as partner states, moving together in the same direction and having a common approach to the challenges that we face as a region. In any case, the challenges that we face as partner states are almost the same, particularly during and even now after COVID. So I'm glad that they agreed on the common theme of accelerating recovery after COVID-19 and coming up with a raft of proposals to see that we spur our economies to full recovery after COVID-19. So thank you so much. Now, as a region, we need to deal with leakages in our different tax systems. And I'm glad that it has emerged during our discussions that as a region we face certain challenges within our different tax systems, including illicit financial flows, insufficient tax revenues because of tax evasions, and also that our tax systems seem to be not as comprehensive as we would want them to be, so that we are able to generate adequate tax revenues to finance our development priorities as partner states. So as East African community, we have always been asking for the Council of Ministers to have an in-depth analysis of what works best in our economies and work as a team. The day we chose to say we are into this marriage, then we accepted that this marriage comes with its own challenges. And we must continue to fix those challenges deliberately, in spite of our differences, whether in terms of the structures of our economies, but fundamentally we are almost the same. So it is a necessary undertaking that we work together as East African community to make sure that we have an effective system that works for our people. It has also emerged that, you know, we are not, our trading between the East African community is still far much below. It's actually below 15%, the inter-EAC trade, even as we have the ambitions of going into the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. We have not maximized the trade opportunities within the EAC. And this is on account of several challenges, including non-tariff barriers, several non-tariff barriers. We have legislations in place. We are not lacking in policy, but I think there is the lack of implementation. And that arises from our own commitments in our different partner states. So the call that we have been making, and I'm glad that it has also come out very strongly in the research here, is for us to ensure that we intensify conversations around effective implementation of our commitments, whether they be, you know, elimination of non-tariff barriers, whether be it investment in infrastructure. We need it in order to facilitate integration and enhance our capacity as a region to respond to the challenges that we face as a region together. Now we need to diversify. Indeed, our problem has been that all of us produce almost the same products. So you find that you can't trade within yourselves because you're producing the same thing. So I'm glad that during this year, for example, in Uganda, we are focusing more on value addition, and we are also moving into services. We need to focus on things that can make us very competitive as a region, but also allow us to trade between ourselves. The moment we open up to the Africa Free Continental Trade Area, we are certainly going to be faced with goods coming from different markets, but we should also have something that we are going to be selling out in order for us to earn. Now, the fear of loss of revenue, I have had that come in the research. You know, like I said before, the moment you go into regional integration is a give and take. You should expect in the short term that we are going to make losses, but we need a big picture attitude to regional and continental integration. In the long run, as long as we are efficient in our production, as long as we can create capacity in our manufacturing sector, then we are going to be more competitive and would have opened up market and will be more productive. So the fear of loss of revenue is an interim fear, but can be overcome by efficiencies in our production, but also within just our own tax systems. If we are able to, to widen the tax base, we are able to generate more revenues, we are more productive, investment in the productive sectors, transform our agriculture, and make sure that we have a value chain that employs more people, then we are going to be able to generate more revenues to cover what you would consider the perceived losses that come with the continental free trade area. So the work is supposed to be internal here. Our fears can be, we can take care of those fears if we, build more efficiency at the local levels and ensure that we have more capacity to produce. And that goes for all the other partner states. The fear that, the challenge that we have had is that we are narrowing so much of our ambitions, and we are not really putting in enough effort, to be able to overcome some of the obstacles that we face. Otherwise, opening up of the market to Africa is a huge opportunity. Now, I read a book sometime called Wealth at the Bottom of the Pyramid. It's by an author called C.K. Prahalad. And whereas the context is quite different, but the principle is almost the same. Because for him, he sees opportunities down there, if only we can create them. That we have decided to exclude the so-called poor from our tax systems because we think they don't have anything to pay. But we can actually transform that community into a tax-paying community if only we did the right thing, investing in the right thing, investing in education, investing in infrastructure, making sure that there is health services, we grow a quality population that grows up and in future is able to pay taxes. We need to have that big picture mentality if we are to transform our region, if we are to move this community and Africa. Finally, I want to thank the Council of Ministers for coming up with the theme. There is one thing that I'd forgotten, is about the discipline. There are discipline issues, and they are not Uganda specific. They are regional, actually. If you go to Kenya, if you go to Tanzania, if you go to South Sudan is even worse, because South Sudan up to the moment is not yet integrated into our customs system. And I think that's the reason why they are not captured in the research of Siatini. I'm now responding on behalf of Siatini. They didn't have a chance to respond. But I think the South Sudan is yet being fast-tracked and integrated into our customs system. So they do not have sufficient data that can be used for this kind of analysis. But you can see that if you took if you took interest in what goes on in some of those, it grows in discipline in our tax systems, in the way we do our work. I think there is a lot that needs to be done by us as East Africans, by us as Ugandans, to ensure that we achieve the ambitions that we would want I know that many of us, we express a lot of expectations. Those expectations should come with responsibility. The challenge is that we want just to be given, but to take, but we don't want to give. So we need both. It's a give and take relationship. It's a two-way traffic. So thank you so much for this conversation that has taken place here today. And I would request that Siatini and all the other partners, let us have this conversation go on in all the other capitals of the East African community to inform policy discourse, to inform decision making, because these are very, very useful insights that, if shared with other think tanks across the region, could then impact on the policy landscape at the regional level, but also influence certain decisions that are very critical. Decision making in the East African community is quite elaborate. It's a very highly hierarchical community. There are so many layers of decision making, but we can, fast track decision making if we have an intelligent report system and be able to influence, especially at the technical level. We have the senior officials that always come in. I think that Mr. Kagwa and his team usually come together as senior officials, and then there is council. Basically is the policy organ, and it takes direction from the senior, after the senior officials have really done so much of the analysis. So mine is to recommend that we need to have these linkages across the region so that we have a common understanding of what the challenges are and what we can do together as the East African community to drive our integration agenda, and see that when we commit to the Continental Free Trade Area, we are actually, broadening the space to enhance our trade relations, and also to be able to generate as much revenue as possible to finance our priorities. I thank you so much, and I bring you greetings from the East African Community Secretary General and the Speaker of the East African Legislative Assembly. We look forward to working very, very closely with all of you in your different capacities. Feel free to invite members of the East African Legislative Assembly and the East African Secretariat for this kind of very, very insightful conversations. Thank you so much.
Let's bring the height of the microphone down to the citizens and not those who represent the citizens. Thank you very much, Honorable Jojo Dong, for a very good closing remark. And you can see the integration between Siatini and the legislators, that he could even answer their question. That's real deep integration for policy making. It gives all of us assurance that those who advocate for the citizens are interacting with those who are elected by the citizens to do those representations. We do not have a lot more to do. Just as an administrative measure, lunch is going to be served. And thank God the people online are off. If you're still online, please go wherever you are, the nearest place, and eat at your expense. But for those here, you will have a coupon. But we're going to make you walk to the Rio Hotel. Don't eat from the conference center. So there is food here, that's not your food. You're not supposed to eat from the conference center, but rather from the hotel. Isn't that nice? That we're going to eat Serena food from the hotel side. They call it the lake restaurant. I think because there is fish from the lake or something like that. Not mijingo. So we're still doing some good things happening here. I want to, again, on behalf of the organizers and everybody, to appreciate your participation in this meeting. The conversations are not closed because the business is still ahead of us. As Simon Kaher indicated, it is opportunities out there. Want to actualize them, want to realize them. We cannot eat opportunities. We cannot eat other things. We must actualize them and enjoy them. So lunch is served. Once again, thank you very much, the sponsors, the organizers, and everybody who has participated in this event. On behalf of Siatini and partners, we want to appreciate. And please respond again when we invite you for a more candid conversation. Thank you. Lunch is served. Make sure you get a coupon, and we cross over to the the Lakeside Restaurant at the Serena Hotel. Thank you.